I used to tell myself the night shift was the easiest part of being a dispatcher. No rush hour pileups, no loud fights outside bars, no panic shop owners calling in every few minutes. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights, the quiet tapping of keyboards, and a trickle of calls from people who didn't have anywhere else to turn. That was before the breathing. It was my third solo shift. I was 23, still wearing the same headset I'd been issued during training, still glancing at the laminated call flow sheet taped to my desk every time the phone rang. There were only 3 of us on duty that night. Me, Jenna, and an older guy named Curtis who'd been working dispatch longer than I'd been alive. It was just after midnight when the phone lit up. Line 3. Unknown number. I hit the button. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes people misdialed or froze up. So I tried again, keeping my voice calm, like they'd taught us. Hello. This is 911. Can you tell me where you are? The silence was heavier than it should have been. It wasn't just dead air. It had a texture to it, like the sound was damp. Then I heard it. A slow, steady inhale. A pause. Then a soft exhale. Breathing. It was faint, far back from the phone, but definitely there. I glanced at the call timer on my screen. 0:06. Sir or ma'am, if you can't speak, try to tap the phone or make a noise so I know you're there. Nothing. Just another inhale. Another exhale. I signaled to Curtis, who was half listening from the next desk over. He raised his eyebrows, rolled his chair closer, and leaned toward my screen. The number was masked. No location data. No GPS ping. Nothing but a gray box where the address should be. Could be a prank, he mouthed. I wasn't so sure. The breathing was too steady, too patient. Are you hurt? I tried again. If you can't talk, I'll send help to your location. If you can tell me where you are. The only reply was breathing. It wasn't panicked or labored. Just slow. Almost deliberate. I typed into the system. Silent caller. Possible distress. No location data. Curtis motioned for me to keep them on the line while he checked with Jenna to see if she could trace it another way. The minutes crawled by. I could hear my own pulse in my ears, but the breathing never wavered. Every so often there'd be the faintest shift, like the sound of fabric brushing a microphone or someone adjusting their weight, but it never turned into words. I'd dealt with hang-ups before. Usually if someone didn't talk after a couple minutes, they disconnected. But this call just stayed open. 5 minutes. 10. 15. The breathing went on, unbroken. And the weirdest part? I started to notice it syncing with mine. Every time I breathed in, they breathed in. Every time I exhaled, they exhaled. At first I thought I was imagining it, but the pattern was too exact. Curtis came back, shaking his head. No trace. No ENI. No ELI, nothing. Like it's not even hitting a cell tower. I swallowed. Could be VoIP. Even then, we'd get something. I went back to the line. Listen, I don't know if you're in trouble or if you're just scared, but I can't help you if you don't say anything. The breathing paused, just for a second. Then it came back, slower now, almost drawn out. I don't know why that pause hit me so hard. It felt like whoever was on the other end was listening, not just hearing me, but watching me somehow. At the 17-minute mark, Jenna appeared at my shoulder. No trace on my end either. The number's not in any database. That's when Curtis said something that made my skin crawl. Could be one of those ghost calls. Jenna frowned. You mean like the butt dials from dead numbers? Sort of, Curtis said. Happens once in a blue moon. System get a phantom signal. No source, no origin, but it rings through anyway. I'd heard of ghost calls, but never like this. Those are just empty lines, a click, and then nothing. This was breathing. 20 minutes in, I'd run out of things to say. The official guide said to keep the line open, but my voice felt small in the quiet, and every word seemed to make the breathing more present. Then, without warning, the line went dead. No click, no tone, just the call timer freezing at 2014, then dropping off my screen. I sat there for a long moment, headset still pressed to my ear, waiting for the line to light up again. It didn't. Curtis patted my shoulder. We'll file it as a silent call. Nothing else we can do. I logged it and tried to shake it off, but for the rest of the night, I kept catching myself breathing in sync with someone who wasn't there. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I drove home in the dark, replaying the sound in my head. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. over and over. It took me a long time to fall asleep. And when I did, I dreamed I was sitting at my dispatch desk, staring at the blinking light on line 3. The timer was frozen at 2014, and through the headset, I could hear my own voice whispering, "I'm right here." I thought about the breathing for days after that shift. It got into my head. When I was brushing my teeth, when I was waiting at red lights, when I was lying in bed at night, staring at the faint glow of the street lamp through my blinds. I kept telling myself it was just a prank, someone messing with a rookie. But deep down, I knew that kind of patience, the kind it takes to sit on the phone for 20 straight minutes without saying a word, wasn't something you fake for fun. 3 nights later, I was back on shift. It was a Thursday, quiet again. Curtis was out sick, so it was just me and Jenna for the first few hours. Around 1 in the morning, line 3 lit up. I froze. It shouldn't have mattered. It was just a phone line, not cursed or anything, but seeing that little yellow light on the same spot as before made my stomach turn. I hit the button. 911. What's your emergency? This time, I heard nothing. Not even breathing. Just dead silence. Hello? Can you hear me? Silence. I almost hung up, but something made me keep the line open. I don't know why. Maybe it was the memory of that slow inhale, the pause, the way it had felt like someone was on the other end studying me. Then, faintly, the breathing came back. It was the same pace as before. Slow. Measured. I gave Jenna a look, and she mouthed, "Same one?" I nodded. She came over, leaned in, and plugged her headset into the split jack so she could listen. We both sat there listening to the faint rhythm of air moving in and out of someone else's lungs. She typed into the system, "Attempt trace." This time, something came back. Not much, but enough. The display flickered, and then a partial address appeared on my screen, 112 Bracknell Street. I'd been working here for months, and I'd never heard of Bracknell Street. Jenna frowned. "Where is that?" "Midtown." I ran it through the city map database. Nothing. No Bracknell Street in our jurisdiction. No Bracknell Street in the county. But the system didn't seem to know that. It still marked it as a valid location. Jenna dispatched a unit anyway. Car 12, respond to 112 Bracknell Street. Silent caller, possible medical distress. Car 12 was Officer Hale and his partner, Diaz. Reliable guys. No nonsense. They acknowledged and rolled out. The breathing on the line didn't change. Not faster, not slower. Just steady. I tried again. "Sir or ma'am, units are on the way. Can you tell me if you're safe?" No answer. 10 minutes later, Hale's voice came through the radio. "Dispatch, we're on Bracknell." Jenna keyed up. "Copy that. Do you have eyes on the location?" Pause. "Yeah, we're here." Something in his tone was off. I couldn't put my finger on it. "Can you confirm address?" Jenna asked. Another pause. 112 Bracknell Street. White 2-story. Porch lights on. I looked at her. She looked at me. The system app was still blank where Bracknell Street should have been. "How's the scene?" she asked. Hale hesitated again. No movement inside. No vehicles in the driveway. "Looks old. Like it's been here a while." The breathing in my headset changed, just slightly. It was still steady, but there was the faintest sound underneath now. Like the rustle of leaves. "Hale, can you confirm cross streets?" I asked, taking over the radio. There was a long pause before he replied. "Crossing with Morningside and, his voice trailed off. "Hang on." More silence. Just the faint hiss of the radio. Then Diaz came on instead. "Dispatch, I think you should, double-check the map. This street's not on GPS ours or yours." I felt a chill climb up my spine. Weird thing is, Hale added, "I've been driving this beat for 8 years. Never seen this block before." The breathing in my headset got a fraction louder, like the caller was leaning closer to the phone. I muted my mic and whispered to Jenna, "Tell them to clear the scene." She nodded and keyed up. "Car 12, if there's no immediate threat, clear and return to patrol." There was a pause. Then Hale said, "We'll head back." But, hold on, someone just opened the door. My stomach dropped. Through the headset, the breathing stopped. Just silence. I unmuted. "Hale, do not engage without backup. Can you describe the subject?" Another pause. A longer one. Finally, his voice came back, softer. "Dispatch, there's no one there. Doors open, but there's nobody inside. The line in my ear clicked once, and the call timer froze, 17:02, before disappearing. I took off my headset. My palms were damp. Car 12, clear in return, Jenna said, her voice tighter now. We'll follow up with mapping. They didn't answer right away. When they finally did, Hale just said, copy, and signed off. After they were gone, I tried to look up property records for 112 Bracknell Street. Nothing came up. Not just no property, no street. No historical records. No zoning plans. Nothing. It was like it had never existed. I went home that morning feeling like I'd been holding my breath for hours. I kept seeing Hale and Diaz in my mind, parked in front of some house that shouldn't have been there, watching a door open into empty air. I didn't hear the breathing that night when I lay in bed, but I still didn't sleep, because in my head, I couldn't stop thinking, if that street isn't on the map, where exactly were they? It had been a week since the Bracknell call, but I was still carrying it around in my head like a weight. Not just the breathing, not just the blank spot on the map. It was the way Hale had said, doors open, but there's nobody inside. I hadn't told anyone outside the shift. It wasn't the kind of thing you could explain without sounding dramatic. And in dispatch, you learned quick not to waste time on stories that didn't have clean endings. But the thing about nights like that is, they don't stay isolated. They bleed into the next shift. It was a Friday, almost 2 a.m., when it happened again. I was working alone in the front row. Jenna was in the break room. Curtis was talking to someone from IT about a software update. The room had that heavy, late-night quiet, where the only sounds were the soft hum of the HVAC and the faint clicking of my keyboard. A domestic disturbance call came in, nothing unusual. I routed patrol, logged the details, moved on. The moment I hung up, another call lit up the board. Line 1 this time. 911. What's your emergency? It was a kid's voice. Shaky. There's someone outside my window. I kept my voice calm, got the address, dispatched a unit. While I stayed on with him, I typed quick updates into the CAD. The kid's voice kept cutting in and out, like he was moving the phone between his face and his chest. I was halfway through asking if he could lock the door when I noticed something on my console. Line 3, the same line from before, was glowing yellow. Connected. My stomach tightened. I hadn't answered it. I was already on a call. But there it was, timer running. 00:14. 00:15. 0:16. For a second, I thought maybe Curtis had picked it up. I craned my neck toward his station. He wasn't there. His headset was hanging on the monitor. Line 3 just kept counting. 00:27. 0:28. I told the kid to stay with me, that officers were almost there, and sent a quick IM to Jenna. Do you have line 3? A second later, her reply came back. No. Why? I didn't know what to say, so I just typed, it's live. She didn't answer. The kid was still talking, but I could feel my focus split. My eyes kept darting back to that yellow light, that ticking timer. 00:54. 00:55. When the officers got to the kid's house and confirmed the suspect was gone, I closed out the call. My headset automatically switched to the next active line, which should have been nothing. But instead, I heard it. That breathing. Same slow rhythm. Same faint pauses. I muted my mic and stared at the timer. 01:13. 01:14. 1:15. I hadn't accepted the call. No one had. But somehow I was on it now. Dispatch, you there? It was Jenna's voice, coming through the side channel we used when we didn't want the call to hear. Yeah, I said, unmuting. My voice came out quieter than I meant. You're on 3, aren't you? She asked. I didn't answer. I just looked at the console at the way the little red bar showed, in use, even though no one had picked it up. I tried the standard disconnect sequence. The call stayed live. Then something else happened. While I was still listening to the breathing, another call lit up on line 2. A woman screaming about someone trying to break in. I picked it up, adrenaline kicking in, but the breathing didn't stop. It was still there, low and steady, in my left ear, even as the woman's voice came through the right. I kept my tone steady for her, dispatching units, asking questions. But in the spaces between her words, I could hear that other line. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. At one point, the woman yelled something to someone in her house, and her voice overlapped perfectly with the breathing, like it was filling in the silence between her sentences. When that call ended, I braced myself to deal with line 3. But before I could, another call came in, and the breathing stayed. It was like it had rooted itself into the system. At 2:41 a.m., Curtis came back and sat down, yawning. I waved him over and handed him my headset without saying a word. He listened for maybe 4 seconds before his face went still. "You kidding me?" he muttered. I shook my head. He tapped a few keys, tried a manual kill command. Nothing. The timer just rolled on. 03:02. 03:03. Finally, he pulled the headset off and set it on my desk. If it's a system glitch, it'll clear at shift change. Just ignore it. Ignore it. Easy for him to say. For the rest of the shift, every single call I took had that same low breathing under it. It didn't matter if I was talking to a drunk who thought his neighbor stole his mailbox or an officer calling in for plate checks. The breathing was always there. Once during a lull, I tried speaking directly to it. "I know you can hear me," I whispered. "Why don't you tell me where you are?" The breathing didn't change, but my console did. For half a second, the caller ID field, normally blank for this line, filled with text. Not a number, not an address, just 2 words, "Look behind." I spun around in my chair, so fast my headset cord yanked taut. No one was there, just empty desks, the glow of monitors, and the faint hum of the lights. When I turned back, the words were gone. The timer kept going. At 5:59 a.m., exactly 1 minute before shift change, the line cut out on its own. The yellow light blinked off. The breathing stopped. Curtis acted like it never happened. Jenna didn't want to talk about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Because even after I went home and laid down in the quiet, I swore I could still hear it. That same inhale, that same pause, that same exhale. Only this time, it didn't sound like it was coming through a headset. It sounded like it was coming from the dark corner of my bedroom. I came back from my next shift like nothing had happened. That's the thing about working here. No matter what you hear, no matter how much it sticks under your skin, the schedule doesn't care. You clock in. You sit down. You put the headset on. It was a Thursday night. Quiet so far. Just me, Deb, and a newer guy named Mason at the far end of the row. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead felt louder than usual, like a swarm of bees trapped in the ceiling. I've been trying not to think about the call. That call. The one that never disconnected. The one that sat there, breathing in the background while I took other emergencies, like a shadow standing at the edge of my vision. I told myself it was a system glitch. A freak thing. I even went as far as asking IT about it. The guy just shrugged and said, "Sometimes the line doesn't close all the way." He said it like he'd seen it before. But the way he didn't meet my eyes, I knew he was lying. Still, I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. By midnight, the rhythm of the shift had settled in. Call, log, transfer, repeat. People crying, people screaming, people breathing. You learn to stop reacting to it out loud. And then, the tiny green light on my console flickered. That sound, that faint static hiss. I froze. It wasn't a new call. My incoming line was clear. This was background. I glanced at my screen. Line 7. The same number. The same timestamp from 2 nights ago. Still marked as active. It wasn't possible. The IT guy had closed it. I'd watch him do it. And yet there it was. I didn't want to put my headset closer. I didn't want to hear it. But I had to. The breathing was still there. Slow. Uneven. Not like someone out of breath. More like someone trying not to be heard. "Hello." I whispered it before I could stop myself. There was no answer. I pulled my headset away, heart thumping so hard I could feel it in my throat. It was nothing. It was a glitch. Just noise. I was telling myself that when Mason called over, "Hey, you good?" I forced a laugh. Yeah, just static in my ear. He nodded, like he understood, and went back to his call. But my palms were slick with sweat. Every few minutes, between calls, I'd glance back at line 7. Still there. Still open. Still quietly hissing in my ear. Around 1:15 a.m., I was logging an accident when it happened. My name. It came through the headset so soft, I almost thought it was my own thoughts forming the sound. But it wasn't. It was a whisper. "Sarah." I stopped typing. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I didn't tell him my name. He didn't even speak before. I didn't answer. A long pause. Then, I'm standing behind your chair. The words were so close, they tickled the inside of my ear. I flinched and ripped the headset off, spinning around. Nothing. Just Deb at her station, focused on her screen. Mason picking at his thumbnail. The empty walkway behind me. But I swear I felt it. That shift in the air, like someone had just moved away a second too late. My heart was hammering. I bent down, checking under the desk like an idiot. No one. When I sat back up, Deb was staring at me. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded quickly. "Yeah, drop something." She didn't press, but her eyes lingered on me for a second too long, like she was trying to figure out if she'd heard it too. I didn't put the headset back on right away. I just stared at the console. Line 7, still active. I couldn't keep working like this, so I unplugged my headset completely. That should have killed the audio. It always does, but I could still hear it. Not in my ears this time. In my head, like the voice had found another way in. You left me on the line. I grabbed the cord and shoved it into the port again, almost panicking to get it back in my ears instead of in my skull. Static filled the headset. I looked over at Deb. She was still busy. Mason too. Nobody else heard it. For the next half hour, I didn't touch the mute button. I didn't speak. I just listened. There were small noises. A creak like someone shifting their weight on old floorboards. A faint, wet sound like lips parting. And sometimes my name. Over and over. It wasn't loud. It wasn't constant. It was worse. It was patient. By 2 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I flagged the shift supervisor, a guy named Rob. I told him there was an open line that wouldn't disconnect. He leaned over my station, squinting at the timestamp. "Jesus, this is still going? You should have told me earlier." I thought IT fixed it. He picked up my headset, pressed it to his ear, and listened. After a few seconds, he frowned. "I don't hear anything. Just dead air." My stomach dropped. "Nothing? No breathing?" "No." He shook his head, cutting me off. "Probably just your nerves. Get some coffee. I'll close it." I watched him hit the terminate command. The screen blinked. Line 7 went dark, and for a second, I thought it was over, until I looked back at the screen 5 minutes later. Line 7, active. Same timestamp. I didn't tell Rob. I didn't tell anyone. What was the point? By the time my shift ended, I was a wreck. I went straight home, threw my headset in my locker like it was radioactive, and told myself I was done thinking about it. But that night, lying in bed, the dark felt heavier. Every creak of my apartment made me tense. And at one point, just before I drifted off, I swear I felt warm breath brush my ear. Behind your chair, I used to think the strangest part of this job was how quickly people forget your voice. You could spend 10 minutes talking someone through CPR, guiding them through the worst moment of their life, and the next time they call, they don't recognize you. They don't remember your name. But that's the thing about being a dispatcher. You're a voice in the dark. They hear you in the moment, but they don't keep you. It was around 2 a.m. when the call came in. The board was quiet that night. Just me, a half-empty coffee cup, and the faint hum of the overhead lights. County 6, our rural jurisdiction, had been dead all week. It was all farmland and back roads, broken barns, and houses that leaned like they were tired of being upright. The ring broke the silence. I slipped my headset on, tapped the key. 911, what's your emergency? For a second, all I heard was breathing. Not panicked, not calm either. Just breathing. Then a voice, male, low, tight. "There's someone in my house." I sat up. "Sir, I need you to tell me your address." He rattled it off so fast I almost didn't catch it. County 6, about 12 miles out from town. I repeated it back, got confirmation. "What makes you think someone's there?" I heard them. The floorboards creaked. My dog's going crazy. I can hear footsteps. They're in the kitchen now. His voice was cracking, the way people sound when they're trying to keep themselves from yelling. I started typing the dispatch. "Are you alone in the house?" "Yes." "Can you get to a safe location?" "A locked room. I'm already in my bedroom. Door's locked. I've got a baseball bat." Jesus, they're still moving around. I kept my voice even. "Okay, I've got deputies on the way. Stay on the line with me." "What's your name?" "Calvin." "All right, Calvin. Can you hear the person right now?" He swallowed hard. I could hear it through the headset. "Yes. They're opening drawers. The silverware. I can hear it clinking." Any idea who it could be? No. I live alone. Nobody should be here. I kept him talking, asking him about his house layout, if there was another way out. He said there wasn't. I could hear the faint rattle of the dog barking nonstop in the background, then a sudden bang, loud enough that I flinched. They just slammed the fridge door, he hissed. God, what are they doing? I assured him again that deputies were on the way, that he just needed to hold on. After a few minutes, he whispered, I think they're gone. Are you sure? I can't hear them anymore. I told him to wait for the deputies, not to open his door until they announced themselves. He promised he wouldn't. A minute later, I heard the muffled sound of men's voices. Our guys. The call ended. I logged it, shook off the tension, and sat back. Calls like that get your pulse going, but they happen. People break into houses. Deputies show up. That's the job. 15 minutes later, the line rang again. Same number. I frowned, answered. 911, what's your... There's someone in my house. I froze. It was Calvin. Same voice. Same tone. So you just... I stopped. Something was off. I asked for his address. He rattled it off exactly the same way he had before. Too fast. Like reading a script. What makes you think someone's there? I heard them. The floorboards creaked. My dog's going crazy. I can hear footsteps. They're in the kitchen now. Every word. Same inflection. Calvin, I tried to break in, but he kept going, hitting every beat like we were replaying the first call. He was already in his bedroom, door locked, holding a baseball bat. He could hear the silverware clinking. His voice cracked in the exact same place. My hands went cold. I typed a note in the CAD system, tagging the call. Repeat of previous, verbatim. The dispatcher on the other console looked over at me. I mouthed same call. I asked him again if he knew who it was. He said no. I live alone. Nobody should be here. The exact same words. And then the bang. The same bang. I knew it was coming before it happened. Same loud slam of the fridge door. The hairs on my arms stood up. Calvin, are you okay? I asked, my voice breaking protocol. He paused, just like before, then said, I think they're gone. My skin prickled. I told him to wait for deputies, knowing damn well they'd already been there. But when I checked the GPS log, our units were still out at his property from the first call, searching the place. One of them radioed in, negative on contact. No one inside, no forced entry. I ended the call slowly, listening for anything different. There wasn't. It was the same. Every second of it. I tried to tell myself maybe he was drunk, or mentally unwell. Maybe he didn't remember calling. But that didn't explain why the call was identical. Not just the words, his tone, the timing, the noises. It was like playing back a recording. I didn't want to say it out loud, but the other dispatcher leaned over and whispered, that was weird, right? I nodded. Yeah, weird. I couldn't focus for the rest of the shift. Every time the phone rang, I half expected it to be him again, stuck in some loop. But the night went on without another call from Calvin. When I got off at 6 a.m., I sat in my car longer than usual before starting the engine. The sun was just coming up, turning the fields gold. Everything looked normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, out there in County 6, Calvin was still in his bedroom, still holding that bat, still hearing those footsteps over and over again. And that maybe if I picked up the phone right then, he'd still be on the line, breathing, waiting to say it all again. I don't know if it was the calls or the silence between them that started to make my head feel wrong. After the repeat call earlier, the one that came in word for word, I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. I tried to push through it, the way you do when a bad feeling creeps in. Just keep working. Keep your head down. Answer the phone. But it was like the air in the room had changed since then. Heavy. Stale. Too still. At first, I didn't even notice the clocks. We had 3 wall clocks in the dispatch center. One above the entrance, one over the main call desk, and one back near the filing cabinets. Big, white-faced clocks with black hands that tick loud enough to hear when the phones go quiet. I'd looked at them 1,000 times without thinking. But now, they weren't moving. It must have been 30 minutes after that second call when I finally looked up. 3:07 a.m. The minute hand sat stiff, unmoving. The second hand was frozen between ticks, like it had been caught mid-breath. I frowned, glanced over at the one above the filing cabinets. Same time, same frozen second. At first, I thought maybe they just stopped recently. Maybe the batteries had gone out in all of them at once. Weird, but not impossible. Then the phone rang. I answered on autopilot, headset warm against my ear. County 6 dispatch. What's your emergency? A woman's voice came through, ragged and wet, like she'd been running in the rain. There's someone in my house. It was always the same kind of voice when it was real, quieter, like they didn't want the intruder to hear them. I straightened in my chair, fingers on the keyboard. Okay, are you safe right now? A beat. I'm in the bedroom. Door's locked. He's downstairs. I heard the back door open. I kept my voice steady, asking the standard questions. Her address. Description of the intruder. I typed fast, muscle memory carrying me. As I sent the call out to the nearest unit, I glanced up again at the clock over my desk. Still 3:07. By the time I hung up, I was already shaking it off. Maybe the wall clocks were just busted. We had digital time on the computers anyway. That's what mattered. I tapped the corner of my monitor, pulling my eyes to the screen. It read, 3:07 a.m. I froze. The phone rang again. County 6 dispatch. What's your emergency? There's someone in my house. My hand went cold around the pen I was holding. It was the same woman, the same tone, the same words. I tried to tell myself it could still be real. Maybe she called back. Maybe the line dropped. Maybe, are you safe right now? I asked, my voice thinner this time. A pause. I'm in the bedroom. Door's locked. He's downstairs. I heard the back door open. It was identical, not just close. Identical. Same breaths. Same inflection. Same faint hum in the background, like a fridge running far away. I could have sworn I even heard the exact same crack in her voice on the word downstairs. I was gripping the edge of my desk now, nails pressing into the wood. She hung up when I asked about her address, just like the last time. I stared at the phone for a long time after that. My eyes drifted up again. 3:07. I didn't know how long I sat there before the shift supervisor, Randy, walked past. His coffee steamed in his hand, his shirt wrinkled from leaning over the desk earlier. You good? He asked, slowing down. The clocks are broken. He frowned up at the one above us. Huh, guess maintenance didn't check in this week. No, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. All of them, even the computer clock. He looked at my monitor. That's weird. Yeah, and I've had the same call twice tonight. Same person, same words. Like exactly. Randy just stared at me for a moment, lips pressed into a thin line. Then he gave this little shrug, like he was choosing to let it slide. Could be a prank. Happens more than you think. Phone's still working, right? Call still going out. I didn't answer. Then let's just focus on that, he said, walking off. I want to believe him. I really did. But the pit in my stomach kept growing. Because after that, the calls didn't stop. They just started to repeat. Sometimes it was minutes between them, sometimes seconds. A man reporting a car crash on Old Mill Road. Then, 2 calls later, the exact same man, same frantic stutter, same words. A teenager screaming that her friend had collapsed at a party. Then again, almost immediately after I hung up. Every single call said it was happening now. Every voice sounded as real as the first time. But each time, the clock above my desk read 3:07. After an hour, or what felt like an hour, I stopped checking the wall clocks altogether. It was worse when I looked at them. Like seeing the hands frozen, they made the air heavier. But the worst part wasn't the calls. It was when the voices started to repeat me. It happened in the middle of a domestic disturbance call. I've been talking a man through staying calm until officers could arrive, my own voice steady and low. And then, over the line, I heard myself. Not an echo. Not feedback. Me. Speaking. But not in sync with what I was saying now. My voice was about 3 words ahead. Like I was hearing a recording of something I hadn't even said yet. I stopped mid-sentence. The line went quiet. Hello, I said. And then my other voice, spoke. He's in the kitchen now. He has a knife. I hadn't said that. I hadn't even heard that from the caller. The man on the other end gasped, like he'd heard it too. I cut the line. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold the receiver. I wanted to go find Randy to tell him something was seriously wrong, but when I stood up, the room swayed. It wasn't like being dizzy. It was like the space itself shifted, the corners stretching just slightly farther away. And the sound, God, the sound was changing. The phone still rang, but the space between the rings seemed too long, like each one was being dragged out. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights felt slower, thicker. I sat back down because I didn't know what else to do. I answered the next call because that's what I was supposed to do. It was the same man from earlier, the one with the intruder in his house. Only this time, when I said, County 6 Dispatch, what's your emergency? He answered with, you're still here. My skin crawled. Sir, you haven't left. You think you can, but you can't. It's still 3:07. The line went dead. I don't know how many calls came after that. The voices blurred together, sometimes new, sometimes old, sometimes mine. I stopped writing down details. What was the point? Randy came by once more, asking if I needed a break. I told him no because the thought of standing up again, of walking toward the door and maybe finding it wrong, was worse than sitting here. I think he noticed my hands shaking, though. He set a fresh cup of coffee next to me and left without another word. I didn't drink it. The smell was too strong. The phone rang again. I answered. County 6 Dispatch. County 6 Dispatch. The voice on the other end spoke with me, perfectly in sync. Same tone. Same words. I didn't hang up. I just listened. It kept going. Every sentence I said, it repeated with me. No delay. No difference. Until I said, are you there? And it said, look at the clock. I didn't want to, but I did. 3:07. And for the first time since it started, the second hand moved. Just one tick. It's strange how quickly you can lose track of what's real here. I used to think a dispatcher's job was about information, clear facts, locations, times, details. But lately, it feels like I'm sitting in the middle of some kind of storm. Everything sounds normal when it comes in, but by the time I try to make sense of it, something's gone wrong. That night was quiet at first. Too quiet. We'd already had the clock thing, 3:07 a.m., every single wall clock stuck, and I tried to convince myself it was just a power glitch, even though the calls hadn't stopped. But there's this rule in dispatch. The second you start relaxing, the universe throws something at you. Sure enough, it happened. The radio crackled, a soft hiss, then a voice. Unit 14, respond to a possible 10 to 16 at Route 5 and Old Quarry Road. I remember my hand hovering over the console. 10 to 16, domestic disturbance. Nothing unusual, at least not by the book. Copy that, I said into the mic. Unit 14, you're en route? The reply came fast, like he'd been waiting. Affirmative. On my way. It was Barnes. Barnes is one of those guys you can always count on. Been on the force 15 years. Never missed a call, never mixed up his reports. When he says he's en route, you can bet he's already halfway there. I logged the dispatch at 3:07 a.m., the same frozen time the clocks all showed. My watch said 3:14, but I'd given up trusting it. We moved on to other calls. Small stuff, a noise complaint, a guy claiming his neighbor's yard smelled wrong. Routine nonsense. But 20 minutes later, I noticed something strange. Barnes hadn't called in. Usually, officers check back in when they arrive. At the very least, they give you a status update so you're not left hanging. So I radioed him. Unit 14, status check. Static. I tried again. Unit 14, do you copy? This time his voice came through. Calm. Steady. Yeah, I'm here. Relief hit me. You at the scene? A pause. Then no. I'm still in the squad room. I frowned. What do you mean, still in the squad room? You said you were en route. Another pause. Longer this time. I left. I remember leaving. But his voice trailed off. I waited, pen frozen above my notes. But I'm here, he finished almost to himself. I looked across the floor to the glass wall of the squad room. And there he was. Barnes, sitting at his desk, in uniform, typing something into a report like nothing had happened. I swear to God my skin went cold. Barnes, I said, pressing the mic button. We dispatched you to Route 5. You acknowledged. I know, he said. And then, softer, I remember the road. I remember the turnoff. I remember headlights in my mirror. And then, he stopped again. And then what? I pushed. He looked up at me through the glass. Even from across the room, I could tell something was wrong with his face. Not injured, just wrong. Like his expression didn't match his eyes. I was here, he said finally. I've been here the whole time. That's when I noticed something else. His boots are clean. Barnes never has clean boots. Even if he's just walking to his car, there's always some dust, some mud. But that night, they looked like they'd just come out of the box. I told the supervisor, of course. You can't just have an officer vanish from an active dispatch and reappear at his desk without telling someone. She pulled the logs. The system showed exactly what I'd entered. Barnes dispatched at 3:07 a.m. to Route 5 in Old Quarry. No arrival logged. No incident closed. Just nothing. We called the resident who'd made the original disturbance report. No answer. Later, I found out something that still makes my stomach twist. That address, the one I'd sent him to, it doesn't exist. Old Quarry Road ends at mile marker 12. Always has. There's nothing past it but scrub and stone. So where did I send him? And where the hell did he go, if he remembers driving there? I kept catching him looking at me for the rest of the night. Not angry, not even confused. More like curious, like he was trying to figure out if I was the one who didn't make sense. At one point, he walked over and leaned against the partition by my desk. "You ever get that thing," he said quietly, "where you wake up and you're not sure if you've been dreaming or not?" "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's what it feels like," he told me. But I know I was there. I could smell the pine trees. I could hear something in the woods. Talking. He nodded. But it wasn't words. More like the sound your brain makes when you think someone said your name. That half-second echo before you realize you imagined it. The way he described it made my chest tighten. It sounded a lot like the whispers I'd heard in dead air before. The ones I'd been pretending weren't real. Barnes didn't finish his shift. He said he had a headache and left early. But here's the part that still keeps me up. When he walked out, I glanced at the wall clock again. Still stuck at 3:07 a.m. But as he passed it, the second hand twitched. Just one small, sharp movement, like it was following him. And for half a heartbeat, I could have sworn the tick sounded like a voice I'd been dreading another repeat. By then, the whole dispatch floor felt poisoned. Not in any physical way, but in that quiet, invasive way you can't point to. Like a bad smell that hides until you're alone. Calls had been coming in out of order. Times didn't line up. People swore they'd been places they never left. It wasn't just me noticing anymore. We'd all started talking less. Eyes down. Voices clipped. The chatter that usually filled the gaps between emergencies had been replaced with the low hum of machines and the occasional cough. And when someone's phone rang, whether it was a call coming in or just a line check, you'd see everyone freeze for half a second, like we were all bracing for something. That night, the room was nearly empty. Two other dispatchers on the far end of the row, both with headsets on, both speaking in those practiced, calm voices that somehow make panic sound normal. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering every so often. It was raining outside, but not hard enough to make any real noise. Just a thin patter on the windows. I was tired. Not the normal end-of-shift tired, but the kind that lives in your bones. My stomach felt hollow. I kept staring at the clock, but it wouldn't change. 3:07 a.m. I checked my watch. Same thing. I told myself the battery must have died, but that didn't explain the wall clock, or the one on the corner of my computer screen, or the cheap little digital on the desk beside me. All of them said 3:07. I remember glancing at the other two dispatchers, wondering if they noticed, but neither looked up. That's when my line lit up. The sound was wrong. Usually when a call comes in, there's that clean program chime. This was more like static that had been shaped into a chime. I don't know how else to describe it. I put my headset back on. 911, what's your emergency? For a second, I thought the line was dead. No background noise, no breathing, nothing. Then, leave before the next repeat. I froze. It was my voice. Not just similar. Not just close. It was me. Same tone. Same slight rasp on the edges from too much coffee and too many late nights. The way the words came out, measured, steady, clipped in all the same places. Who is this? I asked. The reply came back instantly. You don't have time. You have to leave before the next repeat. I pulled my headset slightly away from my ear and just stared at my screen. The caller ID was blank. Not withheld, not private, just blank. My pulse felt like it was trying to push through my throat. What do you mean by repeat? I asked, my voice shaking now. There was a pause, a soft inhale, and then It's already happened twice. You don't remember the first one. You won't remember the second. But if you're still here for the third." The voice trailed off. I didn't realize my hand was gripping the desk until I felt my fingernails digging into the cheap laminate. "If I won't remember, how do you know?" I demanded. "Because I stayed," the voice said. "I thought it was a glitch. I thought I could work through it. But the room isn't real after the third." My skin crawled. "The room isn't real. What the hell did that mean? Who are you?" I said again. The voice gave a small, almost pitying laugh. "I told you. I'm you." And then, very faintly in the background, something else. It sounded like breathing. Not the caller's breathing. This was closer to the microphone, heavier, slower. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. But the voice didn't answer that time. It just repeated, "Leave before the next repeat." The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, headset still on, waiting for, I don't know, a callback? Some kind of explanation? But nothing happened. The other two dispatchers hadn't looked up once. I tried to focus on my monitor, but my hands were trembling. I couldn't shake the sound of that voice, my voice, coming through the line. And the way it had said, "The room isn't real." I turned to the wall clock again. Still 3:07. That's when another call came in. This time, the chime was normal. The ID read from a rural address out on County Line Road. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the accept key, but training kicked in. 911, what's your emergency?" A man's voice, panicked, shouting about shadows moving outside his house. My gut twisted. This sounded exactly like the dead zone call we'd taken earlier in the week. Word for word. The same shaky breaths. The same weird gaps between sentences. I flipped open the log and scanned back, yes. It was the same. Even the pauses matched. "Sir, stay on the line," I said, but my voice sounded far away to my own ears. This wasn't a repeat in the sense of déjà vu. It was literally the same call. The same moment happening again. My heart started hammering. Was this the next repeat the voice had warned about? Or was that still coming? The man's voice cracked as he begged me to send someone. I heard something slam in the background. Then silence. The call ended abruptly. When I looked up, the two other dispatchers were gone. Their chairs still sat there, headsets hanging, monitors glowing, but the people were gone. I stood up so fast my headset cord yanked taut. My breath caught in my throat. The room was suddenly too quiet. No voices, no keyboard clicks, no printer hum. Just the distant patter of rain and the buzz of the lights. I walked around the row, calling their names. Nothing. It was like they just stepped out for a smoke. Except no footsteps, no door. And the station only had one exit, which I could see from where I stood. My stomach turned. I decided then I was leaving. Screw protocol, screw the log. Whatever this was, I wasn't going to wait around for the third. I grabbed my bag and headed for the exit. But when I pushed the door open, the hallway beyond wasn't the hallway. It was the dispatch room. The same chairs. The same desks. The same wall clock, frozen at 3:07. I staggered back, my vision swimming. I must have been more tired than I thought. I tried the door again, same thing. Every exit led back to the room. Even the bathroom door opened to rows of monitors and headsets. I started to panic. My breathing went shallow. Then my line lit up again. This time, I didn't even put my headset on. I just stared at it. The chime was that warped static again, hissing in my ears. Against every instinct, I answered, 911. I started, but the voice cut me off. "I told you to leave." It was me, but not like before. This voice was tired, frayed, like it had been here a lot longer than I had. "I tried," I said. My throat felt tight. "I tried to leave, but the door." "There's no door," the voice said flatly. Not after the second repeat. My knees went weak. "You said I wouldn't remember the second one," I whispered. "You didn't," the voice said. "Not all of it, just fragments. But now it's too late." Something moved in the corner of my vision. A shadow, darker than the rest of the dimly lit room. At first, I thought it was a trick of the flickering light. But then it slid along the wall, slow and deliberate, like it knew I was watching. "What happens after the third?" I asked, my voice breaking. The line crackled. "You stop being the one answering," the voice said. The shadow stretched taller, impossibly tall, reaching toward the ceiling. I could feel the air around me getting heavier, pressing down on my chest. My headset suddenly went dead, No click, no tone. Just silence. And then, from somewhere behind me, another phone started ringing. Not a desk phone. Not even the right kind of tone. This was old. The shrill, metallic kind you'd hear from a rotary phone. I turned, but there was no phone there. Just the empty row of desks. The sound kept going, echoing into space until I couldn't tell where it came from anymore. I backed up toward my chair, clutching the edge of the desk. And then, everything went quiet. No rain. No lights buzzing. No ringing. The clock still said 3:07, and my phone lit up one more time. The ID was blank. My hand shook as I answered. 911, what's your emergency? A voice came through. My voice. But it wasn't warning me this time. It was asking, where am I? I still remember the exact sound of the phone that night. Not the ringtone. 911 phones don't really ring. It's this sharp, high-pitched chirp, like a smoke detector testing itself, and then a dead click before the line opens. But that night, it felt sharper. It didn't just interrupt the silence, it cut through it. I was halfway through my coffee. Not even coffee, just burnt, bitter sludge from the bottom of the pot. I've been alone in the dispatch room for maybe 2 hours, running through the usual calls. A fender bender. A drunk guy yelling at a streetlight. A welfare check that turned out to be a cat stuck in someone's shed. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until that chirp. I pressed the headset closer. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing at first. Just this faint hiss, like static, that was barely there. I thought maybe it was a butt dial or one of those prank calls kids make when they find out the number actually works. Then, so faint I almost didn't catch it. Hello. It was a man's voice. Quiet. Hoarse. Sir, can you speak up? What's your emergency? There was a pause. Then the sound of him sucking in a slow breath through his teeth. They're above me. I sat up straighter. Above you? Sir, are you saying someone's in your home? Another pause. No, not in my home. His voice cracked, like he was forcing every word through a throat that didn't want to speak. In the crawl space. The word crawl space hit me in a strange way. It's not a word you hear often on calls. Attic, sure. Basement, all the time. But crawl space? It felt deliberate, like he'd chosen it carefully. Okay, where are you right now? I'm in bed, he whispered. I can hear them moving, crawling. I started typing in the address as soon as he gave it, signaling the nearest patrol to head over. Sir, I want you to stay calm. Officers are on the way. Do you have any weapons or a way to protect yourself? No, I can't move. That made me pause. Why can't you move? He didn't answer at first. Just another shaky breath. Then, they're right above me. I pressed the receiver harder to my ear, straining for background noise. And that's when I heard it. Not footsteps, not scratching, but a slow, deliberate shuffle. Weight shifting on wood. A dragging sound like elbows and knees pulling forward in small, careful movements. I pulled the mic closer to my mouth. Sir, can you lock your bedroom door? Another whisper. No. If I move, they'll hear me. The sound above him grew faint for a moment. Then there was a new noise, low and steady. Breathing. It wasn't his. I know the difference between breath coming through the line and breath in the background. This was separate, deeper, slower, and it was close enough to his ceiling that the wood seemed to carry it right into his room. Sir, stay with me. Officers are on their way. Is there anyone else in the house? No. Any idea who it could be? Silence. Sir. Finally, he said, so quietly I almost missed it. I think they're looking for me. A faint creak came through the line, followed by that same dragging shuffle. I started hearing my own pulse in my ears. Okay, I want you to stay on the line. The police should be. They can't find it, he whispered. I froze over my keyboard. Find what? The crawl space. That stopped me cold. I glanced at the address I'd sent to patrol. I knew the officers, Mike and Jarvis. They'd be checking for forced entry, doors, windows. Crawl space wouldn't even be on the list unless it was visible from outside. What do you mean they can't find it? Sir, most crawl spaces. No, his voice was firmer now. You can't see it unless you're inside. There's a hatch. Behind the wall. I didn't know what to say to that. The shuffling above him stopped again. Silence. For a moment I thought maybe the person, or whatever, had left. Then came the sound of wood groaning. Pressure on the beams. His whisper returned, and it was trembling. They stopped. I leaned forward over my desk, staring at the little sound level bars dancing on the screen with every noise from the line. Sir, listen to me carefully. I'm staying with you until the officers get there. Can you hear their sirens yet? No, he said. And then, his breathing hitched, their breathing right above my face. I swallowed hard, gripping the pen in my hand without even realizing it. The call was quiet for a moment, except for that heavy, wet breath coming through the ceiling. The kind of breathing that almost sounds damp, like whoever it belonged to was too close, their mouth slightly open. And then, just barely, something tapped twice against the wood, right where his head would have been. That was enough for me to break protocol. Sir, get out of the bed. Quietly. Go to the door. Do it now. There was a rustle of fabric, the creak of a mattress shifting. Then nothing. Sir, are you there? I could hear him breathing, fast now. They're moving, he whispered. Another shuffle. Closer this time. They know I moved. I started talking fast, trying to keep him focused. Listen to me. You need to move toward the door. Slow, quiet. Just keep talking to me so I know you're okay. I could hear him sliding off the bed, his bare feet hitting the floor with the faintest thud. And then another sound. This one didn't make sense. It was like something was following his movement, but inside the ceiling. Each time he took a step, there was a matching creak above him. In perfect sync. Sir, are you sure this is a crawl space and not an attic? No attic. He said it too quickly, like he'd thought about it before. I heard him whisper to himself, maybe not even realizing the mic picked it up. They're not supposed to be there. A faint metallic click came through the line. I thought it was interference until I realized it was nails, fingernails, tapping wood. Then, for the first time since the call started, the breathing above him stopped completely, and something whispered back. I couldn't make out the words. It was too quiet, too low, but it was a voice, higher than his. He froze. I could tell because all I heard was his breathing, fast and shallow. Sir, what did it say? No answer. Sir, they said my name. That was it for me. I switched channels mid-call, radioing Mike directly. Told him to get there now. Didn't care about protocol or dispatch order. When I came back to the call, the man was crying. Not loud sobs, just these silent, stuttering breaths. And then another voice came on the line. Not his. Same deep, wet breath. Same slow cadence. But this time it was right in my ear. Chill. The line went dead. They said when Mike got there, the place was empty. Front door locked. Windows locked. No sign of forced entry. They searched the house top to bottom. No crawl space. Not even a hatch that I didn't sleep much after that call. Not because I was scared exactly. Dispatch gets weird calls all the time. But because of the way his breathing stayed in my head long after I hung up. Slow, wet breaths like his mouth was half open, like he wasn't sure if he should be whispering or gasping. He'd said it so clearly. She's right above me. And I believed him. Even though the line cut out and we lost him, something in his voice told me he wasn't lying. We'd sent a patrol car right away. The location came back to a one-story home out on Marlow Road, about 10 minutes outside town. Old place. Long driveway. I could picture it before they even got there. Peeling paint, yellow porch light, maybe one of those sagging fences that leans toward the road like it's been tired for years. Officer Grant and his partner, Miles, were the ones who got there first. I remember listening over the radio while they updated. The wind on their mics. The sound of boots on gravel. No one answered the door when they knocked. They called for the man. Name was David, but no reply. Grant's voice was calm, but I could hear him getting uneasy as he described the house. Door unlocked. Light still on inside. No signs of forced entry. Just empty. Except for the phone. It was lying on the floor of the living room. Screen still lit. Call still connected, though silent now. That's when they started looking for the crawl space. You hear crawl space, and you think of those square cutouts in the ceiling with a pull-down ladder, or maybe a small hatch in the floor. But they checked everywhere. Attic hatch? None. Basement door? None. Trapdoor under a rug? Nope. I remember Grant saying, Dispatch, there's nothing here. No crawl space. No attic. No basement. Miles added, house is built on a slab. No space underneath. No space above. I didn't like the way they kept repeating that. Like they were trying to convince themselves. Because if there was no crawl space, where had he been? They cleared the place twice. No one hiding in the closets. No footprints in the yard. No sign of forced exit. Just a quiet, still house with the smell of dust and something faintly metallic in the air. When they came back on the radio, Grant's voice was tight. "We're going to have to leave it for now." No signs of the caller. No signs of anyone else. If he's not here, he's not here. But I kept looking at the little note I'd scribbled while I had him on the line. "She's right above me." And the fact that there was nothing above him didn't make me feel better. It made it worse. I was supposed to clock out at 6 that morning. The night shift is always a little surreal. Hours where the world outside is quiet, but the phone in front of you could pull you into anything. But that day, even after I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and replayed the call in my head. The way his whisper got faster toward the end. The sound, faint but real, of something shifting in the background. It hadn't been a voice exactly. More like weight moving slowly over a wooden beam. The thing that bothered me most, though, was what he didn't say. Most people in danger ask for help. They shout, they beg, they scream. David, he just kept telling me where she was. Like his only job was to mark her position. When I came back on shift the next night, I checked the incident log. No update. No sign he called back. The patrol unit hadn't returned to the house. I almost convinced myself to let it go. Almost. Around 3:12 a.m., the line lit up. Unknown number. I answered in my usual voice, the one they train you to keep steady. 911, what's your emergency? Nothing at first. Then breathing. The same breathing. I said his name without thinking. David. Silence. Then, in that same whisper, she's right above me. I felt my stomach drop. David, where are you right now? We sent officers to your house, but you weren't there. Are you somewhere else? He didn't answer. The breathing stayed even, steady, almost like he was forcing it to be. David, I need you to talk to me. Are you in danger? This time, there was a sound behind him. Not footsteps. Not exactly. More like the low scrape of something heavy dragging itself forward. Slow. Deliberate. Above him. I felt my hand tightening around the headset. Can you see her? Is she still in the crawl space? His answer was quieter than before. There is no crawl space. And then the line went dead. We traced the number, of course. Not to his house this time. It came back to a vacant lot 5 miles east where an old farmhouse had burned down years ago. No structures. No shelter. Just flat dirt and weeds. Grant and Miles went out again. I listened to their radios as they swept the area. The ground was dry, no recent tracks. No sign of anyone. They stayed out there 20 minutes before reporting back. Dispatch, there's nothing here. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about the way he'd said it, like he'd realized something in the moment he spoke. There's no crawl space. Not confusion. Not surprise. Just a kind of acceptance. A few days passed before anything else happened. And when it did, it wasn't a call. It was a noise. I was alone in the dispatch room. The rest of the staff either on break or handling other lines. The room is never truly silent. You've got the hum of computers, the occasional printer spit, the soft tick of the clock. But that night, there was something else. A faint, rhythmic creak above me. I froze, headset still on, eyes lifting toward the ceiling. It's a drop ceiling, thin panels resting in a metal grid, nothing that should hold much weight. But the sound, it was moving, slow, like someone crawling. It made me think of his first call, of how I'd heard that same shift in the background before the static took over. I stood up, trying not to make any noise, and moved toward the far wall where the sound was headed. The creaking stopped. I told myself it was the building settling. Air ducts, mice, anything. But the skin on the back of my neck wouldn't relax. The next night, just after 4 a.m., David called again. Only this time, he wasn't whispering. He sounded tired. She's still here. I gripped the mic. David, you need to tell me where you are. We can send help. I told you before, he said. She's right above me. I glanced at the clock. You said there was no crawl space. There isn't. Then where is she? There was a long pause. And then, in a voice so low, I barely caught it. In the ceiling. I swallowed. Like an attic? No attic. He coughed, like his throat was dry. Just space. Between things. She moves when I move. Stays when I stay. I pressed him for more, but the static started again. Louder this time, almost like interference from a storm, though the skies were clear outside. Before I could get another word out, the call dropped. The trace failed. No location data. No carrier info. Just gone. I stopped telling the others about it. After the second call, they started making jokes. Ghost girl in the ceiling, my secret boyfriend David, that kind of thing. But I couldn't laugh, because every time he called, I could hear her. Not speaking, not breathing, just there, above him. And lately, I started to think I could hear her in other places too. Like in the quiet moments between calls, when the building settled and the ceiling panels shifted. Or at home, when the heater clicked on and I thought I heard something shift above the hallway. 2 weeks after the first call, Grant came into the dispatch room at the start of my shift. He didn't usually stop by unless there was a form to sign or a question about a log. But this time, he just leaned on my desk and said, "Marlowe Roadhouse? Someone broke in last night." I looked up. "David, don't know." No signs of forced entry, but the back door was wide open. Neighbor saw a light on and called it in. "What did you find?" He shrugged. "Same as before. Empty." But he hesitated. The neighbor swears she saw someone in the window earlier that day. Said it looked like a woman. Pale. Long hair. I didn't ask if they found her. I already knew the answer. That night, around 2:40 a.m., the ceiling in the dispatch room made a sound I'll never forget. Not creaking, not shifting, a thump, like a palm slapping down hard on the other side of the panel. I froze, headset halfway to my ear, and then the line lit up. Unknown number. I answered, voice low. "David." His whisper came back instantly, almost like he'd been waiting for me. "She's right above me." The noise in the ceiling shifted overhead, moving slow toward the far wall. I closed my eyes. "Where are you?" There was a pause. And then, "Where are you?" The ceiling above my head let out a long, slow creak. That was when I realized the trace wouldn't matter. Because wherever he was, she was here. Dude, I didn't think much about it when the first call ended. Not right away, at least. The guy's voice, raspy, dry, full of panic, was still echoing in my head. "She's right above me," he'd said, over and over. Then silence. And then nothing. The patrol team searched the property and came back empty. No crawl space. No attic. Just flat ceilings and insulation. No place for anyone to hide. I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe he'd been confused. Or drunk. People call 911 for all sorts of reasons that make no sense. But there was something in his voice that night. Something that didn't sound like confusion. It sounded like resignation. I tried to shake it off. Took a sip of stale coffee. Checked the time. 2:41 a.m. The graveyard shift has this way of bending time. The hours blur together until you're not sure if you're still on your shift or if you've been here your whole life. And then I heard it. It wasn't loud at first. A faint scuffing above my head, like someone sliding a heavy bag across a floor. Only, there wasn't a floor above us. The dispatch room was on the top level of the building. Above us, there was just the roof and some ductwork. And yet, the sound was steady, deliberate, dragging. I froze in my chair, eyes flicking up to the ceiling tiles. The hum of the fluorescent lights suddenly felt too loud, like they were covering something I was supposed to hear. It came again, a long, low scrape, then a pause, then another scrape, closer this time. I told myself it was pipes settling, or maybe the wind pushing debris across the roof. But the night was dead calm, and that sound, it didn't have the randomness of wind. It was paced. It was moving. And then, God help me, I realized it was directly above my desk. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the cheap white tiles, and my breath caught in my throat. For a second, I imagined them bowing in the middle, something pressing down from the other side. I reached for the radio. My fingers felt clumsy. "Unit 3, you still in the area?" A crackle. "Copy. What's up?" "I need you to check the roof access on the east side." "Possible. I don't know, possible trespasser." I winced at how unsure I sounded. "Copy that. En route." While I waited, I kept my eyes locked on the ceiling. The sound didn't stop. It just kept sliding, slow and patient, like it knew I couldn't do anything about it. When Unit 3 finally reported back, his voice was flat. "Negative. Roof's clear. No signs of entry." The sound stopped the second he said it. I sat there for a long moment after, my skin crawling. I wanted to tell him to check again, but I could already hear the edge of annoyance in his tone. Cops don't like being sent on wild goose chases. And maybe that's all it was. Except, about 30 minutes later, I heard it again. Not above my desk this time. Over the far end of the room, above the empty workstation no one had used in years. Same dragging sound. Same slow, deliberate pace. I stood up. I don't know why. It wasn't like I was going to climb up there and look, but I couldn't just sit there listening. I walked to the far desk, each step feeling heavier than the last. The sound stopped when I got close. The silence felt wrong, like it was waiting for me to make the next move. I stayed there, staring up, my heart thudding. My mind went to the call earlier in the night. The man insisting someone was above him in a space that didn't exist. I thought about how the patrol team had checked and found nothing. And then, standing there under the quiet ceiling, I had this terrible thought. What if that's exactly what's happening here? What if there's no space up there? What if whatever's moving doesn't need one? I shook it off. Told myself I was tired. Told myself it was nothing. Went back to my desk. And for a while, the room was silent again. It was around 4 a.m. when the next call came in. 911. What's your emergency? At first, all I heard was breathing. Slow, shaky. Hello. I said again. It's back, a man whispered. My stomach turned. I recognized his voice. You're the one who called earlier tonight? He didn't answer that. Just said, it's moving again. It's closer now. I looked up, instinctively, toward the ceiling. Sir, are you still in the same room as before? I asked. Yes, same place. But I think it's following me. I swallowed hard. Following you? The line crackled. It's not in the crawl space anymore. I don't hear it above me now. I hear it somewhere else. Like it's in the walls. Something popped in the ductwork above my head. Loud enough that I flinched. My eyes stayed locked on the ceiling as I tried to keep my voice steady. Sir, I'm sending patrol back to your location. Stay on the line with me. He didn't respond. Just kept breathing into the phone. I signaled to the on-duty sergeant to get unit out there. He gave me a look, half tired, half irritated, but nodded. And then, as I waited for confirmation, I realized his breathing on the line was matching mine. Not just the pace, but the timing. Inhale when I inhaled. Exhale when I exhaled. Sir, I whispered. He inhaled. So did I. The hairs on my arms stood straight up. I hung up. I don't know why. I just couldn't listen to it anymore. When patrol got to his place again, they said the door was wide open and the apartment was empty. No signs of struggle. No one inside. That was the last time he called. I try not to think about it the rest of the shift, but it was impossible. Every little creak of the building sounded like that dragging again. Every flicker of the fluorescent lights made my skin tighten. Around 5:30 a.m., when the sky was still that pale, colorless gray before sunrise, I heard it again. Above me, not moving this time, just there. It was like something was crouched right above the tile, waiting. I sat perfectly still, my coffee cooling in my hands. I told myself not to look up, that looking would make it real. But of course I looked. The tile didn't bow. It didn't move. But I swear, God, I swear, I could feel it looking back. A slow scrape started. Just an inch or two, like it was shifting position. My hand was shaking so bad, I had to put the cup down before I spilled it. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but what would I say? That I was hearing noises in a building full of noises? That the man from earlier had vanished, and now something was above me? I stayed like that until shift change. When the morning dispatcher walked in, cheerful and yawning, the sound stopped. Like it had never been there at all. I didn't tell anyone about that night. Not officially, anyway. But I started noticing little things after. Files going missing from my desk, then showing up in strange places. My headset being unplugged when I knew I'd left it in. And every so often, late in the shift, I'd catch the faintest sound from above. Not always the dragging, sometimes just a tap or a short, sharp scrape. Like it was reminding me it hadn't gone anywhere. I'd been staring at the ceiling for so long, I almost forgot what I was supposed to be doing. The sound hadn't come back in the last hour. No dragging, no shifting weight above the tiles, just the low hum of the dispatch equipment and the occasional squawk from the radio. But every time my eyes drifted up, I pictured it again. That faint, Wet scrape. Like something heavy being pulled across a surface that didn't want to let it go. I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. Stress can make the smallest sound feel like an omen, and I'd been running on bad coffee and worse sleep for weeks. Then the phone rang. I snatched the receiver too quickly, my voice cracking. 911, what's your... I found you. I froze. It was the same voice from before. The man in the crawl space. The one who swore someone was above him in a place that didn't exist. You hear me? He asked, almost playful. I found you. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. You've been looking up all night, he said. Now you don't have to. His breathing was slow, steady. No panic like before. Where are you calling from? My voice was thin. There was a pause. A short laugh. You're the one in the crawl space now. The line crackled faintly. In the background, I thought I heard a faint, hollow echo, like a voice bouncing in a narrow space. I'm not. I stopped myself. My throat felt tight. What do you mean? You're under me. Just like I was under her. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The words sank in like cold water, seeping through clothes. I can hear you breathing through the floor, he whispered. My eyes darted around the room. The same walls, the same desk, the same monitors. But his voice had shifted. It sounded closer. Not just to my ear, closer to here. You don't believe me, he said. That's okay. I didn't believe her either. Her. I swallowed hard. Who's her? Another pause. I could hear the faintest smile in his voice when he answered. She's with you now. The line went dead. I just sat there, clutching the receiver to my ear long after the dial tone started. My brain kept skipping back to his words, trying to find some logical crack in them. You're the one in the crawl space now. I tried to shake it off. I told myself he was screwing with me, that he had my number from earlier, that this was just some sick game. But when I looked at the wall clock, I realized something that made my stomach drop. It was 3:07. Again, I stared at the hands, unmoving, frozen just like the last time I checked. The hum of the equipment felt louder now, like it was pressing against my skull. I leaned back in my chair and forced myself to look up. The ceiling tiles were motionless, perfectly still, but they looked heavier than I remembered, thicker, as if something was pressing down from the other side. I got up. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I walked around, I'd see some obvious source of the sound, some mechanical thing. But when I stepped toward the corner of the room, the faintest vibration passed under my shoes. Not enough to make noise, just a shift like the floor had breathed. That's when the second phone rang. Not the main dispatch line, the dusty beige landline on the back wall, the one no one used anymore. I hadn't even been sure it still worked. My feet felt heavy crossing the room. When I picked it up, there was no greeting, just breathing. Slow, even. Why are you standing? The voice asked. It was him again. I turned, my eyes sweeping the ceiling. My other hand gripped the edge of the desk. Sit down, he said. It's better if you don't look up. My throat was so dry it hurt to speak. Where are you? His answer came so softly I almost missed it. Right above you. I clenched my jaw. No, you said I'm in the crawl space now. That would mean that you're below me, he finished for me. Exactly. Something creaked. Not on the phone. Not in the hall. Overhead. It was the same dragging sound, only now slower. Closer. He didn't hang up this time. He just stayed on the line, breathing in time with the sound above me. A tile near the center of the room shifted almost imperceptibly. Not enough to fall, just enough to show a black line of shadow around the edge. I couldn't look away. She likes to switch places, he murmured. My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What does that mean? But he didn't answer. Instead, I heard another voice. It was faint, almost like a recording buried under static, but it was definitely female. And it was right above me. He's right under you, she said. I stepped back so fast my heel caught on the chair leg, and I almost went down. The voice in the phone chuckled softly. She's been waiting to say that. The dragging resumed. Only now, it didn't sound like something being pulled across the ceiling. It sounded like someone turning around in a narrow space. I backed toward the door, but the landline cord went tight in my hand before I could take more than 2 steps. I let it slip from my fingers. The phone didn't hang up. It just swung slowly, the voice still whispering faintly from the receiver. I reached the door, grabbed the handle, and yanked. It didn't budge. The lock wasn't engaged. It just wouldn't open. Behind me, the tile shifted again. "You can't leave," the man said. "You're in the crawl space." I pressed my forehead against the door, my hands flat on the cold metal. "No, no, this is a room. Rooms are just bigger crawl spaces," he interrupted. The female voice spoke again, softer this time. "Look up." I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed not to. But I did, and I saw fingers. Pale, dirt-streaked fingers curling around the edge of the loosened tile, knuckles white with tension. They weren't holding on, they were pushing down. My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs would crack. Then, just as slowly, the fingers withdrew. The tile slid back into place with a dull, final click. Silence. The line on the beige phone went dead, and the wall clock ticked to 3:08. Only 1 minute had passed. I've worked dispatch for 5 years, and in that time I've taken my share of strange calls, cries for help that turn out to be pranks, voices whispering about things they couldn't explain, people screaming about shadows in their houses. But nothing felt quite like this one. It was a Tuesday night just after 2 a.m. The floor was dead quiet. The kind of quiet where you hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead and the faint click of the wall clock every second. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, trying to keep my eyes open, when my phone lit up. Line 3. I put on my headset, went into autopilot. 911. "What's your emergency?" There was a pause. I thought maybe the line had gone dead, but then a whisper. "Hello." It was a child's voice. Soft, a little shaky. "Hi," I said gently. "This is 911. Are you okay? Can you tell me your name?" Another pause. Then, "Ben." "Okay, Ben. Are you safe right now?" Silence again. I could hear faint breathing. Then his voice even quieter. "There's someone in my room." I felt my pulse tick up. "Someone in your room? Is a family member?" "No," he whispered. "He's under my bed." I started typing into the system, flagging it as a possible burglary. "Okay, Ben, listen to me. I'm going to get police officers to your house, but I need you to stay on the line with me. Can you tell me your address?" He rattled off the street and number like it was something he'd practiced. I patched it through. Officers were already rolling out. "All right, Ben. Can you tell me what this person looks like?" There was a long stretch of breathing. Then, "He looks like me." That made me stop for a second. "Like you?" "Yeah," he said. "Same hair, same shirt, same face." His voice trembled, but it wasn't just fear, it was confusion. "Ben, where are your parents right now?" "They're sleeping." "Are they in the same room as you?" "No, down the hall." "Okay, can you get up and go to them?" "No," he whispered sharply. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because," he said not to move. I felt my skin crawl. "He talked to you?" A shaky yes. "What did he say, Ben?" He went silent for so long, I thought maybe he dropped the phone. Then I heard it, just barely, his voice trembling, breath catching between words. He said, "If I get up, he'll get up too." For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the dispatch floor in my ears and my own pulse. "Ben, can you tell me where under the bed he is? Is he near the head or the foot of it?" "He's right under me." I can hear him breathing. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. Kids imagine things all the time, sure, but there was no giggle, no playfulness. This was real fear. I asked, "Can you put the phone down quietly and look under the bed for me?" "No." "Why not?" "Because he's looking back at me." I shivered. "Ben, how do you know that if you haven't looked?" A pause. Then, "I can feel it." There was a sound then, like a faint scrape. I thought maybe it was just static, but Ben whispered right after, "He's moving." I kept my voice calm, slow. "Where's he moving?" "Closer to the edge." I checked my screen. Officers were 3 minutes out. Felt like a lifetime. "Ben, do you have anything you can throw under the bed?" "A toy, a pillow, anything." There was rustling, then a muffled thump. I heard the scrape again, louder this time. "He caught it," Ben whispered. I tried to keep my voice steady. "What do you mean he caught it?" "He caught it and he's holding it, but he's not moving now." I asked what the toy was. "My bear." There was another stretch of quiet. Then, in the smallest voice yet, Ben said, "He's smiling at me." I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Ben," I said firmly, "listen to me. The police are almost there." I wanted to take the phone and, very slowly, slide off the bed on the side farthest from him. "Can you do that?" I think so." I heard the faint creak of bed springs, slow movement, then a sudden sharp intake of breath. What happened? I asked. He moved too. My fingers tightened on the desk. Is he still under the bed? Yes. But now his head is on my side. 2 minutes out. Ben, you're doing great. Just keep talking to me, okay? He's whispering now, Ben said. What's he saying? He says he wants to switch. Switch what? He says he wants my bed, and I can have his. What does that mean? There was a faint giggle then. Not from Ben. Higher pitched. Almost playful. But there was something about it. Something too long, too deliberate. Ben whispered, "That's him." I glanced at the screen. Officers were 1 minute out. My chest felt tight. Ben, I want you to get off the bed and run to your parents' room now. Don't stop. Don't look back. I can't, he said. Yes, you can. No, his voice cracked. Because I think he's me. Ben, what? And then I heard it. Clear as day. Another voice on the line. Same pitch. Same softness. Same exact tone as Ben. Tell her I said hi. The breath caught in my throat. Ben started crying then. Soft, muffled sobs. The line went dead. I stood up, so fast my chair rolled back and hit the desk behind me. My supervisor was already looking at me, eyebrows raised. I mouthed, "Kid, burglary, urgent," and she was patching into the officers' radios. A minute later, the responding unit checked in. They were at the house. They said the front door was locked, but the parents answered after a few knocks. They'd been asleep. Said they hadn't heard a thing. The officers went to Ben's room. They found him sitting on the bed, clutching a stuffed bear. But when they asked him if he'd called 911, he said, "No, I barely slept after that call. You'd think after working here for a few years, I'd learn how to leave things at the door when I go home. But that kid's voice, the way he whispered about another boy under his bed, it kept looping in my head like a bad recording. At first, I told myself it was just an overactive imagination. Kids dream up monsters all the time. Shadows turn into shapes. The pile of clothes in the corner suddenly has eyes. I've heard it before. I've even had my own. But there was something in his voice, this quiet panic that didn't feel like pretend. I kept wondering if someone went out to check on him after the call. I never got the follow-up. Sometimes that happens. We pass it to police, and the thread just gets cut on our end. But it stuck with me, and by the time my next shift came around, I found myself almost hoping I'd hear from him again. It was late. Same night shift quiet. That strange, heavy quiet where the phones are still, but you know it won't last. You can feel a call coming before it happens. And then the line lit up. I answered the way I always do. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause. Not the kind you get when someone's hesitating to speak. This was listening, like they were making sure it was really me. Then, it's me. From last time. I froze for half a second, but my voice stayed even. Hi there. What's your name? He didn't answer that. Just, you remember me? I said yes. I didn't know if I actually did, or if I was just telling him what he needed to hear, but the truth is, I did remember. You don't forget a call like that. He said, he's still here. Who? I asked, even though I knew. The boy. I kept my voice calm. Is this your brother? He was quiet again. Then, I don't have a brother. I wrote that down immediately. Okay, I said. Where are your parents? They're sleeping, he whispered. The way he said sleeping, it didn't sound right. Not like he was afraid to wake them. More like he'd already tried and failed. Are you safe right now? I asked. No, he said. Just that. Flat. Certain. My stomach tightened. Where's the boy now? I asked. He breathed in like he was about to answer, but then his voice got strange. The word cut off halfway, like someone else was saying it with him. And then, clear as day, I heard his voice again. The exact same voice. Same tone. Same pace. Only it was faint, like it was coming from farther away. But it was repeating him, word for word. It echoed. I sat there, pen frozen over my notepad. Can you hear that? The kid asked. Yes, I said, my mouth dry. That's him, he whispered. The line went quiet except for breathing, 2 sets of it. One close, one farther away. What's he doing? I asked. He's copying me, he said. And as he said it, I heard the second voice, his exact voice, repeat it from what sounded like under a blanket, muffled but perfect. He's copying me. It was like listening to a recording playback in real time. No delay. No difference. I try to think logically. Maybe there was a sibling. Maybe he was playing a trick. Maybe the under-the-bed thing was just a game. But my gut wasn't buying it. I've heard siblings mimic each other before. It's messy. It's imperfect. This wasn't. This was flawless. Okay, I said. Can you ask him something? The kid hesitated. Like what? Anything, I said. Something only you would say. I heard him take a breath. I like peanut butter sandwiches. And from somewhere else in the room, perfectly timed, I heard, I like peanut butter sandwiches. It wasn't late. It wasn't delayed. It was simultaneous. I don't know how else to explain it. Like they shared the same mouth, split in two different places. I could feel goosebumps crawling up my arms. Does he always do that? I asked. Only when I talk, he said. And only at night. Where is he right now? I pressed. The kid's breathing quickened. Under my bed. Can you see him? No, he whispered. Then the second voice, in the exact same whisper. No. Do you want to get out of the room? I asked. I can't, he said. The echo. I can't. I leaned forward, as if that would help me get closer to him. Why not? He said I can't leave until I say what he says. He said I can't leave until I say what he says. The repetition was perfect, not a word ahead or behind. What happens if you don't? I asked. The kid didn't answer. Neither did the other voice. Just breathing. I don't know why, but that silence felt worse than the copying. Like they were both waiting for something. Are you holding the phone? I asked him gently. Yes. Yes. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Okay, I said slowly. I need you to listen to me. The police are coming. You don't have to talk to him. You can stop. No, I can't. No, I can't. What will he do if you stop? I asked. This time, only the farther voice answered. You'll see. The line went dead. I sat there staring at the disconnected call, hand frozen on the receiver. Protocol says you log it, dispatch units, move on to the next. But I didn't move on. I kept thinking about how the second voice had waited until the very last moment to speak on its own, like it wanted me to know it could. I stayed late after my shift, watching the system for updates. The officers went to the address. They said the kid was fine. His parents were confused, said he must have had a nightmare. The room was empty when they checked. But here's the thing, when I asked if the bed had anything under it, the officer paused before saying no. It wasn't a long pause, but it was enough. That was 3 nights ago. I've been coming in early every shift since, half dreading, half hoping the phone will ring again. Because if it does, I'm not sure which will scare me more. If it's him, or if it's the other one that I didn't want to answer the phone that night. I know that sounds stupid. It's my job. But my hands were already sweating before I even picked it up, and I didn't know why. The screen flashed the incoming call. Same number. Same kid. The one from last night. I've been thinking about him all day. The way his voice had trembled, but still carried something strange underneath. Like he knew more than he should. Like maybe he wasn't scared at all. Maybe he just wanted me to be. When I answered, I didn't say my usual line. My throat felt dry, so all I managed was, hello. There was silence for a second. Then, it's me. It was him. Same small voice. Same faint hiss of static behind it. Hey, buddy, I said, trying to sound calm. Are you safe right now? He didn't answer that. Just started talking. He's still here. I could hear his breathing. Fast, shallow. The boy? I asked. Yes. Is he talking to you? There was another pause. I could almost hear him looking around, if that makes sense, like I could hear the sound of his head turning. He's copying me, the boy said. A slow wave of cold went through me. Right now? I asked. Yes. Then, as if to prove it, I heard it, another voice. It was faint at first, like it was coming from far away, but through the same line. A fraction of a second after the boy spoke, another voice echoed his words. Same pitch, same tone, same breath. He's copying me, the second voice said, perfectly matching the first. I froze. I didn't even write anything down. I just listened. What's your name? I asked. The boy said, Daniel. And then, Daniel, the second voice repeated. It wasn't a recording. I could hear the little stumbles in his speech, the tiny clicks of saliva. Both voices were alive. Where are you right now, Daniel? The first boy said, in my room. In my room, the second one whispered. Is anyone else home with you? I asked. My mom, the first boy said. My mom, the second boy followed. I could feel my pulse in my ears. I glanced at the clock. 2 minutes into the call, but it felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. Daniel, I said, is the other boy in the room with you right now? Yes. Yes. I flinched at the second answer. It was closer that time. The delay between them was shorter, like the second one was catching up. What's he doing? I asked. The first boy said, he's sitting on my bed. He's sitting on my bed. The second one murmured, almost on top of the first boy's words now. Can you look at him? I asked. The line was quiet for a moment. Then the first boy said, I am. I am. Does he look like you? Yes. Yes. I could hear something strange in the background now, a faint, rhythmic tapping. Not on the phone, not on a table. It was heavier, slower, like the sound of bare feet hitting the floor, somewhere far away, but not far enough. Daniel, I want you to do something for me, I said, my voice shaking despite myself. I want you to say something the other boy wouldn't know. The first boy went quiet. Then he said, I like chocolate ice cream. I like chocolate ice cream, the second voice said, perfectly steady. Something else, I pushed. I hurt my knee last summer. I hurt my knee last summer. There was no hesitation. The second voice didn't even have to think. The air in the dispatch room felt heavier, like someone had turned off all the vents. I couldn't tell if my skin was cold because of fear or because the room itself had gotten colder. Daniel, I said carefully, does the other boy blink? No, no. I gripped the desk so hard my knuckles popped. What's he doing right now? The first boy said he's smiling. He's smiling. My mouth went dry. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. But I couldn't. I had to keep him talking. Is your mom nearby? I asked. She's sleeping. She's sleeping. Is your door locked? Yes. Yes. The tapping sound in the background was faster now. Closer. I wasn't sure if it was still footsteps. It almost sounded like someone drumming their fingers against wood. Daniel, can you tell me if the other boy has said anything on his own? No. No. The way they said it, so flat, so certain, made me feel like the room had tilted slightly. I swallowed hard. I need you to. That's what happened. They both started talking at once. At first, it was just a few words. The first boy said something, the second repeated it. But then, the delay was gone. They were speaking over each other, perfectly matched, syllable for syllable, like one voice split into two. I don't like the light on. I don't like the light on. I want you to tell her to come in. I want you to tell her to come in. It wasn't just repetition anymore. It was chanting. My stomach nodded. I tried to cut in. Daniel, stop talking. Just listen to me. But they didn't stop. She can't see me. She can't see me. She's not supposed to see me. She's not supposed to see me. The voices were starting to overlap so much I couldn't tell which one was the real boy anymore. Or if there even was a real one. Daniel, I snapped. I need you to stop. Silence. For a few seconds, I thought the call had dropped. But then I heard it. Both of them, breathing, at the same time. One slightly faster, the other slower, like two animals in the same cage. Which one are you? I asked quietly. Neither answered. Daniel, I said, if you can hear me, tell me something only you would know. A pause. Then, I'm in the dark. I'm in the dark. It was hopeless. And then I heard a third sound. Something scraping against the phone. Slow, deliberate, like a fingernail dragging along the plastic. Daniel, I whispered. That's when one of them spoke alone. Just one. Do you hear him too? Before I could answer, the second voice came back. Only this time it was lower. Rougher. Not a child at all. Don't answer him. I swear to God my entire body went cold. I heard a muffled thump in the background, followed by quick footsteps. Then the line went dead. I sat there, holding the receiver long after the dial tone had started. My fingers felt numb. When I finally put the phone down, I realized my hand was shaking so badly I could barely log the call. But I didn't write much anyway, because I didn't know what I'd just heard. 2 kids, or 1 kid, or something else entirely. The only thing I knew for sure was that they were speaking in perfect sync, and that for a few seconds, neither of them sounded human. I didn't want to answer the phone anymore. Not after last night. Not after the voices. But that's the thing about this job. You don't get to just walk away because your hands are shaking or because you feel like someone's still whispering in your ear. You sit down, you put on a headset, and you answer the call. Except this morning, I wasn't the one picking up. I was just waiting for the officers we'd send out last night to call in, to tell me what they'd found at the address. I'd imagine it 100 different ways. Maybe the boy would be gone. Maybe they'd find him hiding in a closet. Maybe it was just some sick prank from a neighbor kid. But the line stayed quiet. Too quiet. When it finally rang, I almost jumped out of my chair. It wasn't the boy. It wasn't the weird delayed echo I'd heard before. It was dispatch from the field. 2 short words. We found them. I swear, the them threw me. I even asked, "You mean him?" The boy. "No. Them." A pause. "They're both here." The drive, there's a blur in my head. I wasn't even supposed to go. Dispatchers don't roll out to scenes. But I begged my supervisor. Said the call was mine. So I needed to see it through. I don't know if it was stubbornness or something deeper, some awful need to look this thing in the face, that got me in the passenger seat of that cruiser. The house was smaller than I expected. 1 story, peeling paint, one of those old TV antennas still sticking out of the roof like a crooked finger. There was no light in the windows, even though the morning sun was bright. Inside, the air smelled stale, like something had been sitting for too long. And then, I saw them. 2 boys. They were standing in the middle of a small bedroom. Bare walls, just a bed pushed up against the corner and a dresser with a broken drawer. The carpet was worn down to the threads in places. And the boys, God, they were identical. Same short, messy brown hair. Same pale skin, knees scratched up. Same loose-fitting t-shirt with a faded superhero logo that looked like it had been washed 100 times. If you squinted, they could have been twins. But no, not twins. They were exact, down to the way their left shoe's lace was frayed and the faint freckle under the right eye. One stood near the window, the other near the door. The distance between them felt like an invisible line neither one dared to cross. The first one looked at me, and it was like a punch to the chest. His eyes, I recognized them. That tiny flicker of fear, that searching look, the same tone I'd heard when he whispered over the phone. He's copying me. The other boy spoke first. He's the fake. His voice cracked just slightly. He came in here last night and started pretending to be me. The boy by the window stepped forward. No, he's the fake. He talks like me, dresses like me, but he's not me. He's trying to. They stopped, almost in unison, and stared at me. Like I was supposed to know. Like I was the one who'd been keeping score. The officers tried the usual, questions about parents, school, birthdays. But the answers were the same. Word for word, sometimes even overlapping. If one said June 21st, the other said June 21st, just a beat behind, like the delay on the call last night. It made my skin crawl. When they asked where their mom was, both boys pointed to the same closed door at the end of the hallway. One of the officers went in. I didn't follow. I just stayed there, caught between them, feeling like the air in that room was getting heavier by the second. When the officer came back, his face was pale. He shook his head just slightly, and that was all I needed to know. The boys didn't react. They just kept staring at each other. I pulled one aside just enough so I could talk without the other hearing. Or at least I hoped. I asked him to tell me something only the real him would know. He didn't hesitate. You answer my call. Last night, you told me to stay in my room, and you asked if I could still hear him breathing. He glanced over my shoulder at the other boy. He was right outside my door. I could hear his voice. My voice. Whispering. The other boy was watching us now. Not moving, not blinking. Just listening. When I tried the same with him, he said it too. Almost the same words. But this time, he added, "You told me to stay put." But I saw him in the hall and I ran. I got here, and he was already inside. The details didn't line up perfectly, but they were close enough to feel wrong. Like they were both telling fragments of the same memory, trying to fit themselves into it. One of the officers muttered to the other that Child Protective Services would have to handle this. We're not equipped for whatever this is. And that was the thing. No one knew what this was. Not a custody dispute. Not a runaway. Not even a missing persons case anymore. Just 2 of the same child. And no one could prove which one was the original. At some point, they sat them on the bed together. That was the worst part. They didn't fight. They didn't shout or try to claw at each other. They just mirrored. If one crossed his arms, the other did too, half a second later. If one tilted his head, the other followed. And when one smiled, God help me, the other smiled just a beat after, too wide, too forced, like he'd been told what a smile was but had never actually done it before. The more I watched, the more I felt this sick thought curling in my gut. What if they both believe they're real? What if there isn't even a copy, just two things convinced they're the same? One of the boys, window boy, looked at me suddenly. "Do you remember what I told you last night?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure which one of them had actually said it. He leaned forward, his voice low. "It's not over. He's going to keep trying. Until—" He stopped, eyes darting to the other boy. The second boy's lips were moving, just barely, but I couldn't hear the words. I stepped closer. "What did you say?" He looked up at me with that same pale face and whispered, "Until you can't tell which one is you." I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even go home. The image of those two boys sitting side by side burned into my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined them getting up at the same time, walking in perfect sync, speaking over each other until their voices blurred into one. And the worst part wasn't the fear of them finding me. It was the thought that maybe, just maybe, they already had. They say CPS took them both. Separate foster placements, pending identification. But the calls didn't stop. The first came at 3:07 a.m. 2 nights later. My phone rang, and when I answered, it was a child's voice. "Can you tell me which one I am?" Then another voice, same tone, same pitch, just a fraction of a second behind. "Can you tell me which one I am?" And I swear, I didn't know. Not anymore that IT was a slow night. One of those shifts where the hum of the air vents feels louder than your own thoughts. Midnight had passed without a single call. I've been sitting there, sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling through an old news article on my phone just to keep my eyes open. The dispatch room was quiet, too quiet. Then the line lit up. I set my phone down and answered. 911, what's your emergency? At first, I didn't hear anything. Just static. Then a breath. Ragged, shaky. "Hello," I said again, leaning closer to the mic. The voice came through, so suddenly it made me flinch. "They're here." It was a man's voice. Hoarse. Whispering like he was trying not to be heard by someone else. "Sir, who's there? Can you tell me your location?" There was a pause. Then, the shadows. "They're in my yard." I started typing into the CAD system. "Shadows? Sir, are you saying there's someone outside your home?" "No," he whispered. "Not someone. Not people. Just shadows. They're moving." That made me stop typing for a second. I'd heard plenty of strange calls in my years on the job. Meth heads talking about invisible snakes, kids making prank calls. But there was something about the way this man said moving that chilled me. "Okay, sir, I still need your location. Are you in the city?" "No, I'm out on County Line Road, near the grain silos." I frowned. County Line was out in the sticks, barely any houses, no streetlights. "Can you give me a house number?" "I don't know if it'll matter. The power's out. It's all dark. I can't even see my own driveway." The line crackled like there was interference. I heard him breathing heavily again. "Sir, do you have a flashlight? Can you get somewhere safe inside?" "I'm inside," he said, "but the windows, they're still there. I can see them when a moon comes out from behind the clouds. They stretch across the yard, long and thin, but there's nothing making them." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't frantic. But there was this edge in his voice, like he was already halfway broken. "All right, stay on the line with me. I'm sending officers now." I radioed the nearest patrol unit, gave them the location, told them to be careful. There was a pause on the other end of my headset. Then one of the officers replied, "Copy. We're en route. About 10 minutes out." I went back to the call. "Sir, what's your name?" "Robert." "Okay, Robert. Just keep talking to me until help gets there." Are the shadows still moving? He didn't answer right away. Then I heard his voice faint. "They're closer now." I tightened my grip on the headset. "How close?" "They're at the porch." Something slammed against his side of the line, wood creaking under weight, and he let out a sharp breath. "They're on the walls." "No, they're on the glass." I could hear his voice starting to shake. "Robert, lock your doors. Stay away from the windows. Do not open them for any reason." "I already locked everything," he whispered. "But I don't think it matters." They're not touching the doors. They're just." The line went dead. I called back immediately. No answer. Straight to static. I tried again. Nothing. By now my chest was tight. I radioed the responding unit. told them the call had dropped. They said they were a few minutes away. Those minutes felt like hours. I just sat there staring at the deadline, my fingers drumming against the desk. Finally, the radio crackled. "This is Unit 4. We're on scene." I leaned forward. "Do you have eyes on the caller?" A pause. "Dispatch, we can't see much. The whole area is blacked out. Even the moon's behind the clouds. No lights anywhere. We're going up a drive now." I could hear their footsteps crunching gravel, the wind rushing past the mic. Then the officer's voice came back, lower. "Dispatch, you're not going to believe this. The front yard, there's nothing here. No one outside. No footprints. No cars but his. Is he inside?" Another pause. "Yeah, he's here. Shaken up, but unharmed. Says the shadows left when we pulled up." I asked them to put Robert on the line so I could confirm. The officer handed him the radio. His voice was quieter now. "They're gone, but they'll be back." I didn't know what to say to that. The officers checked the property, backyard, sides of the house, even the nearby fields. No signs of anyone. They finally cleared the scene and left Robert at home. I thought that was the end of it. But at 3:14 a.m., the line lit up again. Same number. I picked up. 911. "They're back." His voice was barely a whisper. "Robert, the officers just... They're inside." My heart dropped. "Inside where?" "Your house." "Yes." I could hear something faint behind him. A kind of scraping sound. "Robert, get somewhere safe in." The scraping grew louder. Then, in a voice that wasn't his, something spoke into the phone. Not Robert. And the line went dead again that I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the call, though that was part of it, but because every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying his voice in my head. The way it cracked. The strange way his breathing would suddenly stop, like he was listening for something just beyond the line. When his shift finally ended, I didn't drive home right away. I sat in my car in the lot, engine off, windows down, staring at the empty parking spaces like they could answer what happened. The county had called it a power outage. Rolling blackouts, the official update said. But the storm that hit us wasn't bad enough to cut everything. It didn't make sense. By the next evening, I was back on shift, pretending like it was a normal night. The screens glowed in front of me, little squares of artificial light in an otherwise dim room. Then, 37 minutes into the shift, the same line lit up. I didn't even think. My hand was already reaching for the headset. "This is County Dispatch." It's still here. That voice. That same low, trembling rasp from last night. "Sir, it doesn't stop when it gets light again. You said," his breath hitched, wet and uneven. "You said help was coming." I sat back, heart hammering. "Where are you right now?" "In the kitchen." "Your address." "I need your address, sir." There was a pause. Then, in a flat, small voice, "It moves when I blink." I didn't know what to say to that. I tried again. "You mean someone's inside with you?" "No." His breathing grew shallow. "Not someone. Something." I wrote it down in the log without thinking. I don't even know why I bothered with the details. Every word felt wrong, like it didn't belong in a report. "What do you see right now?" He swallowed, so loud I could hear it over the static. It's at the edge of the counter. It's not shaped right. I can't see the face." "You said it moves when you blink." I asked. "Yes. Not fast. Just closer. Every time I close my eyes, it's a little closer. I tried keeping them open, but they burn now. They won't stop burning." I felt something shift in my stomach. The image came too easily. A figure that never moves when you look, but waits for you to look away. "You're saying it. Only moves when your eyes are closed." "Yes." He was crying now, but quietly, like he didn't want it to hear. I can feel it in the air. The cold comes first, like before a storm. Then it's closer. I checked the timestamp. We had 2 units on another call 15 miles away. The rest of the grid was still half dead. No streetlights. No cameras. "Okay, sir, listen to me. I need you to keep your eyes open if you can." "I can't anymore. They feel like sand." His voice was shaking. "It's worse when I look away, too. Even a little. It's like it knows." The sound of a chair scraping came through the line. Then his breathing got heavier, faster. "Where is it now?" I asked. "It's on the other side of the table." The words barely left his mouth before he whimpered. I blinked. I gripped the edge of the desk. "How close?" He didn't answer for a long time. I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then, I can smell it. The hair on my arm stood up. Sir, I need you to... Chill. It wasn't aimed at me. He whispered it to himself. A faint rustle came through. Not footsteps exactly. More like cloth dragging over tile. I was seconds away from patching in every free unit in the county when he said something I didn't expect. It's not alone anymore. I froze. What do you mean? There's more than one. His voice was shaking so hard the words blurred together. They're all around the walls. I can't move without blinking. I can't. The line went dead. I tried calling back immediately, but each time it rang and rang. No voicemail. No pickup. Just the sound of empty air. We sent a car as soon as one was free. They didn't find him. They didn't find anyone. The house was dark, door unlocked, table overturned. A glass of water on the counter, half empty. And in the middle of the kitchen floor, they said there was this dark smudge like someone had spilled paint. It wasn't wet, but it wasn't dry either. The officers said maybe it was mold from the damp. But mold doesn't smear like that. I didn't say anything in the report. I didn't say that I heard faint static even after the call dropped, or that every time I tried to sleep that night, I kept dreaming I was standing in my own kitchen, staring at a corner, waiting for something to move. And in the dream, my eyes always burned. But the worst part, the part one can't shake, is that every single time I blinked, it was closer that I've always hated rural night patrols. Not the kind with streetlights and quiet houses. Those are fine. I'm talking about the stretches of land so empty you can see the Milky Way in the sky, where your headlights are the only light for miles, and every shadow seems too patient, like it's just waiting for you to turn your back. That night started like any other shift. I was riding with Officer Grant, a guy who'd been on the force 10 years longer than me, but still treated every call like his first. He didn't talk much, and when he did, it was usually about the weather or fishing. A safe partner. The kind you're glad to have when you're stuck in the dark. We were about 20 minutes outside town when dispatch sent us a call. Possible trespasser reported near an abandoned property off county line. The caller didn't give much detail, just that he'd seen someone wandering around the fence line. Normally, that would have gone to a single unit, but there'd been a string of break-ins lately, so they doubled us up. The drive out there was quiet. Grant fiddled with the radio, trying to pick up something other than static, but nothing came through. Not even the usual chatter from other units. Just the soft hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel under the tires. I remember asking him if he'd checked the antenna. He just nodded and said, "We're still close enough. Shouldn't be a problem." We pulled onto a narrow dirt road lined with trees on both sides, their branches bowing low like they were leaning in to listen. The property came into view, a sagging, two-story farmhouse with boards over the windows. The porch roof had caved in, and the whole place looked like it had been forgotten decades ago. Grant killed the headlights, and for a second, we sat there in the dark. "Let's keep it quiet," he said, reaching for his flashlight. I followed his lead. The beam cut through the darkness, catching the tall grass waving in the wind, but there was no one in sight. We stepped out, radios clipped to our shoulders. I called into mine, Unit 12, on scene at County Line. Static. I tried again, adjusting the mic. Nothing. I looked over at Grant. He tapped his earpiece and shrugged. "Probably the dead zone," he muttered. "Happens out here." We walked the fence line first, slow and steady. My boots sank slightly into the soft dirt. Every few seconds, I'd sweep my light across the field, catching glimpses of rusted farm equipment and scattered fence posts. Still no movement. About halfway around, Grant froze. His light was fixed on something ahead. "See that?" he whispered. I followed his beam and saw a figure standing about 20 yards away, just inside the property line. It wasn't moving. The flashlight caught just enough to see pale skin and dark clothing, but the face was shadowed like the light just wouldn't stick to it. "Sheriff's Department." Grant called out. "You're trespassing. Step forward." No response. The figure stayed still, and the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. Not just the stillness, but the way it seemed shaped. Narrow shoulders, arms hanging just a little too low, head tilted like it was listening. "Come on," Grant said. "Let's move in." We climbed over the fence and started toward it. I kept my light trained on the figure, expecting it to run or at least turn. But it didn't. And then, without a sound, it was gone. One blink, and it just wasn't there anymore. Grant swung his light around. Where the hell? Did you see it move? I asked. No, just gone. We walked to where it had been standing. The ground was soft here, too. Should have been easy to see footprints. There weren't any. Just untouched dirt and weeds. My stomach was already knotted when I tried my radio again. Unit 12, checking in. Static. Grant tried his. Same thing. We decided to circle the house. The grass was knee-high, whispering against our legs as we moved. The air felt heavier the closer we got to the house, like the heat wasn't escaping the way it should. We reached the back door, which hung open just a crack. The wood was splintered, the frame warped. I caught the smell first, damp and something else. Something sweet, almost metallic. Grant looked at me. You ready? I nodded, even though I wasn't. Inside, our lights cut through layers of dust and peeling wallpaper. The air was so still I could hear my own breathing. Floorboards groaned under our weight, each step sounding too loud. We moved room to room. Old furniture sat where it had been left, draped in cobwebs. In the kitchen, plates still sat in a rack over the sink, as if someone had planned to come back. Halfway through the first floor, my radio crackled. Just a burst of static, sharp enough to make me flinch. I grabbed it. Unit 12 here. Repeat. The static stretched out for a few seconds before a voice came through, faint and warped. Don't blink. I froze. Who is this? Nothing. Just silence. Grant's face was pale. What did it say? I swallowed. It said, don't blink. We kept moving, but now I couldn't stop thinking about the figure. The way it had vanished. And those words. Don't blink. We reached the staircase. The railing was coated in dust, but there were smudges where someone's hand had gripped it recently. We started up. Each step creaked like it might give way. At the top, we split to check opposite ends of the hall. I went left. The first door opened into a bedroom. My light swept across an unmade bed, a cracked mirror, and, just for a second, I thought I saw someone standing in the corner. But when I swung the light back, there was nothing. I tried the next door. Empty. Just another bedroom, this one with clothes scattered on the floor like someone had been packing in a hurry. My radio hissed again. I lifted it to my mouth. Grant. No answer. I heard his footsteps somewhere behind me, then silence. I called his name. Nothing. I headed back toward the hall. His flashlight beam was gone. My stomach dropped. I called again, louder. Still nothing. Then the static hit, loud, rushing, filling my ears. Through it, I heard something else. Not a voice. Breathing. Slow and heavy. Grant, where are you? I shouted. The breathing stopped. I swept my light across the hallway. That's when I saw them. Two figures at the far end. Just standing there side by side. My light didn't catch their faces, just the outline of bodies. I blinked, and they were closer. My chest tightened. I took a step back, keeping the light on them. My hand was shaking so bad the beam jittered. I blinked again, couldn't help it. Closer still. 10 feet now. No sound. No footsteps. Just there. I stumbled back into the bedroom, slammed the door, and pressed my back against it. My radio crackled again. Don't blink. The static swallowed the rest. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the door, waiting for it to open. It never did. Eventually, I heard a faint voice calling my name, Grant's voice. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. Grant stood at the top of the stairs, his flashlight aimed at me. Where the hell do you go? Oh, as I stopped. My throat was too dry. Did you see them? See who? We didn't talk much after that. We finished clearing the house, found nothing, and headed back to the car. The radios came back to life about 2 miles down the road, like nothing had happened. But I keep thinking about those figures, the way they moved, or didn't. And every time I close my eyes now, even for a second, I can't shake the feeling that when I open them again, they'll be closer, that I never really looked at the windows in the dispatch center before. During the day, the sunlight made them useless for seeing outside, all glare and dust streaks. At night, they turned into mirrors. You look up, and all you see is yourself. You forget there's even a world beyond the glass. That night, I wished I'd kept forgetting. It was close to 3 in the morning, the deadest part of the shift. The radios had been a mess all night, bursts of static, half sentences cutting out. The officers on patrol were already on edge. And I was just tired. The kind of tired where the coffee stops doing anything except making your hands shake. The center was quiet except for the hum of the servers and the low crackle of a radio I'd left on in case someone's voice slipped through. There's a certain way that silence sits in a room like that. It feels thick, not just empty, but heavy. I had my headset off for a minute, rubbing my temples, staring at my own reflection in the black glass across from my desk. My reflection was pale and washed out under the dim overhead light, my eyes half-lidded. And then my reflection wasn't the only thing in the window. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, the kind your tired brain invents when you've been staring at the same spot too long. A shadow passed across the glass, slow and smooth, from left to right. Not a person-shaped shadow. Not exactly. It was stretched, the edges soft like it wasn't solid. But here's the thing. There's nothing on the other side of that glass except the parking lot. And I knew, without having to check, that the lot was empty. I froze, staring at the spot where it had disappeared. My heart didn't pound right away. It's strange how your body sometimes refuses to react until your brain is absolutely sure. I leaned forward a little, trying to catch any movement. Nothing. Just my own ghostly reflection staring back. The radio hissed. I flinched, then grabbed the receiver. Unit 12, copy? I said, trying to keep my voice even. Static. Just static. That's when the shadow came back. This time it moved the other way, right to left and slower. It seemed closer to the glass, closer to me. It didn't walk. Didn't sway like a person would. It just glided. I felt that electric crawl on my spine. The feeling you get when you realize you're not alone in a place you thought you were. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, but my hands had already curled into fists. I took off my headset and stood up. The glass was maybe 15 feet away. The only light outside was the dim orange from the parking lot lamps. But from here, it looked like there weren't any on at all. The lot was swallowed in black. I walked toward the glass, slow, like if I moved too fast, I'd scare whatever it was into vanishing. But part of me didn't want it to vanish. Part of me wanted to see it clearly, because not knowing is worse. When I got close enough, I pressed my hand lightly against the glass. Cold. Colder than it should have been for August. I scanned a lot. Nothing. No cars except the 2 patrol units parked far off. No wind to move the trees. No movement at all. And then, in the reflection, something leaned in behind me. I didn't turn around right away. My body locked up. In the glass, it was just a darker patch in the shape of maybe a head? It was tilted like it was studying me. The outline was fuzzy, like it was made of smoke instead of skin and bone. When I finally turned, there was nothing. Just the empty dispatch room. The phone rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I ran back to my desk and picked it up without even looking at the caller ID. Dispatch, I said. A man's voice came through, flat, almost without tone. You shouldn't watch it. I sat there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles ached. Who is this? Static. Who is this? I repeated, louder. The line clicked dead. I stared at the handset for a long time before slowly putting it back down. My mouth was dry. My head felt light. I told myself to log the call. Procedure, right? But instead I just sat there listening to my own breathing. The shadow didn't come back for the rest of the hour. But I kept catching myself glancing at the glass like if I looked away too long, I'd miss it. At 3:42, Unit 12 finally came through the radio, his voice shaking. Dispatch, you copy? I pressed the button so fast I almost dropped it. I copy, go ahead. I think I saw someone moving around the station lot, he said. Looked like, I don't know, a big shadow. But when I drove in, there was nobody there. I turned toward the glass again, my stomach sinking. The outside was still pitch black. But this time, I didn't see myself in the reflection. I saw it, standing at the edge of the lot. Not moving, not breathing, just watching. And I realized something that made my skin crawl. It wasn't on the other side of the glass. It was in the glass. When I first took the night shift at the county dispatch center, I thought the worst part would be the quiet. You hear all kinds of things about working in a place like this. Burnout, trauma, the occasional creepy call, but nobody ever tells you about the stillness. At night, the building feels hollow. The phones don't ring much. The fluorescent lights hum, just a little too loud. Even the air feels like it's waiting for something. I was only 3 weeks into the job when I found the box. It was after midnight, and I'd gone down to the records room to grab an old case file for the supervisor. She said it was in deep storage, which basically meant the far corner nobody ever went to. That part of the room smelled different, less like paper, more like dust, and something stale, like old wood left in the rain too long. I had to squeeze between 2 metal shelves, my hip brushing the boxes as I passed. My flashlight beam caught the labels, dates, case numbers, sometimes handwritten notes like "Do not purge." Then I saw it. The box didn't have a label at all. No date, no number. Just a plain cardboard cube with the top flaps folded shut. It wasn't even taped. Something about that bothered me. Everything in here was cataloged and numbered, no exceptions. I probably should have just left it alone, but I didn't. When I pulled it down, a thin film of dust came off in my hands, floating in the beam of my flashlight like pale smoke. The box was heavier than I expected, weighty in that way that makes your arms feel it all the way to the bone. I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens of them. Each one was in a clear plastic case, but none had labels. Not even numbers written in marker. Just blank tapes stacked tight, some warped slightly at the corners from age. I remember this little pulse in my chest when I saw them. It was the feeling I get right before picking up a phone call from a number I don't recognize. Half curiosity, half dread. I dug one out and held it to the light. The reel inside was wound unevenly, like it had been stopped mid-play. The tape wasn't dusty, though, which was strange. Everything else in the box was. I carried the box back upstairs, telling myself I'd just check 1 or 2 and then return them. The dispatch center's break room still had an old player on a shelf near the coffee machine, probably from the days before everything went digital. The thing had yellowed with age, but it still worked. The first tape clicked in with a heavy, mechanical sound. When I pressed play, there was a long stretch of static. Then a voice. It was a man. His breathing came through first, ragged and uneven, like he'd been running. There was no 911. What's your emergency? No dispatcher voice at all. Just him. I think someone's in my house, he whispered. There was no background noise, no creak of floorboards, no distant traffic. Just that shaky breath. I saw her in the hallway, he said after a pause. She's standing there, not moving. Another pause. This one longer. I think she's smiling. That was it. The tape clicked and went to dead air. I sat there for a minute, just listening to the faint hiss of nothing. My skin prickled in a way I can't describe, like my nerves were remembering something my brain couldn't. The call hadn't gone through dispatch. It hadn't been logged. That's impossible, I told myself. Every call gets recorded. Every single one. I tried another tape. This one started with what sounded like rain, faint and steady. A woman's voice came in, quiet and rushed. There's a man outside my window, she said. He's no wait. Her voice broke off. For a few seconds, there was just the rain. Then, barely audible. He's inside now. The line cut. I just sat there with my hand frozen on the player, my stomach cold and hollow. This wasn't right. None of this was right. I ended up going through 5 tapes that night. Every single one was the same. No dispatcher voice, just the caller. And each one cut off without resolution. One man kept asking, "Do you see it too?" Over and over, his voice shaking harder each time. Another was a kid, maybe 9 or 10, whispering that someone was crawling along the ceiling in his bedroom. One tape was nothing but 30 seconds of someone sobbing quietly in the dark. I didn't know what to do. If I told my supervisor I'd been digging through unlabeled tapes in the records room, she'd want to know why. And if these calls had never been logged, then someone had kept them hidden. I shoved the box under my desk for the night, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The voices felt burned into my ears. I caught myself replaying them in my head while I was answering normal calls. Sometimes for a split second, I'd hear that man's whisper, "She's smiling," over the line before the actual caller's voice came in. I told myself it was just the night shift getting to me. But on my next shift, the box was still there under my desk, and I couldn't resist. The 6th tape was different. It started with what sounded like an empty room, the faint hum of an appliance somewhere far off. Then, out of nowhere, someone laughed. Not a happy laugh, not even a nervous one. It was deliberate, slow. The voice that followed was low and almost gentle. "Are you ready now?" I froze. The words weren't frantic or scared. They were calm. Like whoever said them was in control. There was a shuffle, maybe the phone moving in someone's hand. Then a faint tap, tap, tap like fingers drumming on wood. The line went silent for a long time. I thought the tape had ended. Then, just before it clicked off, the voice whispered, "You've heard me before." I stopped the player so fast it made the cassette squeal. The hairs on my arms were standing straight up. I didn't recognize the voice, but I had the awful sense that it recognized me. I told myself I was being ridiculous. There was no way. But for the rest of the shift, I kept catching movement in my peripheral vision. Shadows, shifting in corners that should have been empty. At one point, I thought I saw someone standing at the far end of the hallway, but when I blinked, it was gone. I didn't tell anyone about the tapes. Not yet. I started bringing the box into the break room every night when I was alone. I told myself I was just cataloging them, figuring out if maybe they were old training calls or staged for some drill. They weren't. Every single one felt real. The fear in their voices wasn't something you could fake. And there was something else, something I didn't notice until about the 12th tape. In the background of several calls, buried under the static and noise, I could hear a hum, not the kind from bad wiring. This was rhythmic, almost like a tune. It made my teeth ache. Once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. It was there in the rain call, the ceiling crawler kid, even in the man asking if I could see it. I didn't sleep much that week. On my nights off, I kept thinking about that voice from the 6th tape. "You've heard me before." I didn't want to admit it, but maybe I had. Not in those exact words, but something about the cadence, the weight of the pauses. It reminded me of a call from my second night on the job. A hang-up. No voice, just that same faint hum before the line went dead. I thought it had been a prank. Now, I wasn't so sure. By the time I'd made it halfway through the box, I realized something else. The calls weren't from the same time period. I could tell from little details. The tone of the static, the way certain voices sounded like they were on old rotary phones while others were crisp and modern. Some of these calls had to be decades apart. So why were they all in the same box? And why weren't they labeled? The night I reached the bottom of the stack, I found a single tape that was different. It wasn't in a case. The plastic was cracked down one side. Someone had written something on it in black marker, just 2 words. "Last one." My gut told me not to play it. I played it anyway. This one started with silence. No static, no hum, no background noise at all. Then a voice I didn't recognize, male, speaking low and steady. "This is for you." I swear, I felt my heartbeat in my throat. There was a scrape, like a chair moving across the floor. Then footsteps, slow, measured, coming closer. I realized I could hear breathing, but it wasn't on the line. It was in the room with whoever was holding the phone. The footsteps stopped. And then, "I can see you," the voice said. The line cut. I hit stop and just sat there staring at the player, my skin cold all over. It was ridiculous, I know, but I had this overwhelming sense that if I turned around, there'd be someone standing behind me. I didn't turn. I took the tape out, shoved it back in the box, and locked the whole thing in the supply closet. But that didn't help, because when I sat back down at my station, the line was blinking. An incoming call. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no one on the other end, just a faint hum. The same one from the tapes that I couldn't stop thinking about the tapes after that night. I'd left the box on the corner of my desk in the dispatch room, tucked just far enough back so it didn't look like it belonged to me, but close enough that I could glance at it every few minutes. Everyone else just walked past it. They had no reason to care. No label, no markings, nothing to suggest it was worth a second look. To them, it was just another relic in a building full of forgotten junk. But I knew better. The first tape I'd listened to, the one about the girl in the woods, had burned itself into my mind. Not because of what was said, but because of how it sounded. The voice had been flat, almost empty, and yet there was this strange undercurrent. Like the caller had been reading from a script written just for me. I told myself I wouldn't touch the tapes again. That I'd file a note somewhere, leave it for someone higher up to deal with. But every time I sat down for my shift, my eyes went to the box. And the more I tried to ignore it, the heavier it felt. Like it was pulling at me. 3 days later, I gave in. It was a slow night. No real emergencies, just a couple of noise complaints and one drunk guy who kept calling to tell me his neighbor's dog was judging him. Around 1:12 a.m., I slipped one of the cassettes into the old player at my desk. The tape clicked into place with a sound that felt louder than it should have in the empty dispatch room. There was a moment of hiss, the faint whisper of static, and then a man's voice. 911. I heard myself say on the recording. My breath caught. It was my voice. Not just any dispatcher's. Mine. I leaned closer to the speaker, my heart ticking faster. A man spoke, low and shaky. Yeah, I need to report something. I think there's been a murder. The me on the tape responded, calm and even, exactly the way I'd been trained. Sir, can you tell me your location? There was a pause, and then the man gave an address. I froze. It wasn't just any address. It was 6 blocks from my apartment. The man's voice trembled. There's blood everywhere. It's everywhere. I think it's a family. 2 adults. Maybe a kid. They're not moving. I felt my stomach knot. I grabbed my notepad and scribbled the address down, though I didn't know why. My brain was already screaming that this was impossible. The me on the tape asked, when did this happen? The man gave this weird, uneven laugh. It's happening right now. I can still hear it. Still hear it. The silence that followed didn't feel like silence at all. It felt like something was standing in the room with me, just out of sight, breathing slow. The voice of the recorded me came again. Sir, do not enter the scene. Stay where you are. Officers are on the way. But the man ignored the instructions. His words got faster, more frantic. They're upstairs. The light's still on. I think they know I'm here. And then there was a sharp, wet sound. Something between a thud and a crack. He made this half scream, half gasp, and the line went dead. The tape didn't stop, though. I could hear my recorded voice trying to call him back, my tone just slightly off from what I remember of my own speech patterns. Like it was me, but a version of me that didn't breathe between words. Then the tape clicked and went silent. I sat there for a long time, staring at the player, the address still burning in my head. It wasn't possible. I'd never taken that call. Not once. I'd never even been in that neighborhood for work. I checked the call logs from that night. Nothing. No record. No entry in the system. It was like it never happened. And yet, the next morning, I drove by the address. It was a 2-story house, pale blue, with a small yard that needed mowing. No crime tape. No signs of anything wrong. Lights off. Curtains drawn. I sat in my car, watching it, feeling ridiculous. Then the front door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a faded sweatshirt. He lit a cigarette, stood there for a minute, then went back inside. Just a normal guy. Just a normal house. I told myself that the tape had to be a fake. Maybe an old training exercise. Maybe a prank by another dispatcher who wanted to mess with a new guy. But later that week, the news broke. Triple homicide. Same address. 2 adults and 1 child found dead in the upstairs bedroom. And the thing that made my stomach turn was the way the reporter described the scene. Blood everywhere. The lights still on upstairs. No signs of forced entry. I didn't tell anyone about the tape. How could I? Hey, I heard a murder on a cassette recording before it happened. Isn't exactly something that gets you Employee of the Month. But from that point on, I couldn't look at the box the same way. Every tape in there felt heavier. Like they were waiting for me to hear them. Like they knew I'd be back. And I was. I didn't even make it a week before I reached for another one. The second tape I played was worse. Not because of what was on it, but because of what it didn't have. There was no operator voice at all. No me, no one else, just the caller. And the caller. They were whispering. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. The voice was cracked, like they'd been crying for hours. I'm in the kitchen, they murmured. They don't know I'm here. My skin prickled. I can hear them upstairs. I think they're looking for me. The sound of footsteps, faint but real, came through the speaker. Then a pause, and a whisper again. I don't know why I called. I don't want to die alone. The tape ended there. No click, no static, just nothing. I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath until I set the tape down and felt dizzy. There was no address on that one. No names. Nothing I could trace. But the way they'd said upstairs, it stuck in my head. Like it was meant for me. That night, I dreamed I was in a house I didn't recognize. The walls were the color of rotting teeth. The air smelled like wet copper. And upstairs, I could hear them moving, not walking, crawling, the sound of skin dragging against wood. I didn't go up there. I didn't need to, because I already knew what I'd find. When I woke, it was still dark. My clock read 3:17 a.m. The box of tapes sat in the corner of my room. I hadn't brought them home. I know I hadn't. After that, I started keeping notes. Every detail from each tape I listened to. Dates, times, descriptions. Anything that might connect them. But the more I wrote, the less sense it made. Some described events that had clearly already happened years ago. Others were still ahead of me. Like the voices on the tapes weren't stuck in one moment in time. They were everywhere. And now they were my life, too. It's been a month since I found the box. 3 more tapes have matched up with real incidents in the city. 2 of them fatal, 1 just a disappearance, though that word doesn't feel right anymore. The thing is, nobody ever calls these in. Not officially. No records. No logs. No dispatch history. Just the tapes. Which means if I don't listen, I don't know. And if I do listen, I can't stop it anyway. Last night, I dreamed again. This time, I was at that pale blue house. The light was still on upstairs. And from the dark, at the top of the stairs, a voice called down to me. My own voice that I couldn't sleep after the first 2 tapes. It wasn't just the things I heard. It was the feeling they left behind, like something had already started and I'd been dropped in the middle of it without a clue. The call about the crime scene that hadn't happened, yet kept replaying in my head. I kept wondering if, by listening to it, I'd somehow become part of the timeline it described. The box of tapes was still sitting on my desk, the cardboard soft from age. Every time I walked past it, I felt a kind of pressure in my chest. It's stupid. I could have just taken it back to storage, put it where I found it, locked the door, and never thought about it again. But I didn't, because I had to know. I don't know if curiosity is the right word. It was more like obligation. Like these tapes were waiting for someone to hear them. And I was the unlucky one who'd been picked. That night, the precinct was quieter than usual. Even the dispatch room felt different. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed lower, almost muffled. Outside the windows, the parking lot looked darker than it should have, like the light poles were only pretending to work. I waited until the others had stepped out. One to get coffee, another to the bathroom. The room was mine for maybe 7 minutes. That was all I needed. I took the next tape from the box. The label just had a number written in faded ink. 17. That was it. No date. No name. The machine clicked when I pushed the tape in. At first, there was just static, a faint hiss. I thought maybe it was blank or the years had chewed away the sound. Then, beneath the static, I heard breathing. Not quick, panic breathing, slower. Controlled, like someone was trying very hard to keep it together. Then came the voice. My voice. I froze. It wasn't just similar. It wasn't just the same pitch or cadence. It was me. Same slight rasp in the mornings. Same way I drag out certain vowels without realizing it. Dispatch, this is the voice hesitated. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you're real. I actually glanced around the room like an idiot, half expecting someone to pop out and yell that it was a joke. But the room was still empty. The voice, my voice, continued. I'm at the scene. God, it's worse than I thought. There's no power. No streetlights. Just the house, sitting here like it's been waiting for me. A sound in the background, a crunch like shoes on gravel. I can't see inside. The windows are wrong, like they're covered in something but not curtains. I knocked. I swear I heard someone moving. But when I tried the door, a pause, a shaky inhale. It opened. I leaned closer to the machine without meaning to. I didn't remember ever saying these words. I'd never been to a scene like that. I'd never even been sent into the field like that. I was just a dispatcher. I don't want to go in, the voice said. But I think I have to. They said someone's still inside. The sound of slow footsteps. Floorboards creaking. Then, another voice, faint but clear enough to cut through the static. Close the door. I felt my stomach drop. My voice, that recorded me, whispered back, "Who's there?" No answer. Just the sound of something heavy sliding across the floor. The next 30 seconds of the tape were quiet, except for the breathing. Then, a muffled thump. The kind you feel in your chest. When my voice spoke again, it was faster. More desperate. I shouldn't have come here. It's not furniture. I thought, a choked sound like someone stifling a sob. They're not moving. None of them are moving. The tape caught a faint metallic sound, a slow scrape. My own breathing on the recording grew erratic. They're looking at me, all at once. Their heads. A loud, sharp crack drowned the rest out, like a door slamming. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until my chest started to ache. The recording continued, but my voice was different now. Flat. Hollow. Don't answer the call. Then the tape stopped. Just like that. No click, no fade out, just silence. I sat there staring at the player, waiting for something else to happen. It didn't. I must have replayed it 3 times, listening for any hint that it wasn't me. Maybe it was some guy who just happened to sound exactly like me. But the more I listened, the harder that was to believe. Every little vocal quirk was there. The way I swallow before saying certain words. The way my voice dips when I'm scared. It was me, saying things I'd never lived. When the others came back into the room, I almost asked them to listen to it, to tell me if I was losing my mind. But I didn't. Something in my gut told me not to share it. Not yet. I ejected the tape, but instead of putting it back in the box, I slipped it into my jacket pocket. It felt heavier than it should have. The rest of the night, I couldn't focus. Every call that came in, I half expected it to be from wherever that place was. A dark house with wrong windows. People who weren't moving, but were still watching. At one point, I caught myself staring at the phone, imagining it ringing without a sound, and me picking it up anyway. When my shift ended, I drove home on autopilot. My apartment felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. I poured a drink I didn't touch. I just sat at my kitchen table with the tape in front of me. I told myself I wouldn't play it again. But at 2:17 a.m., I was digging my old cassette player out of a box in the closet. I put the tape in. This time, the static was heavier. The breathing came in waves, uneven like the recorded me had been running. I made it out, my voice said. I think, but I can still hear them. In the walls. A low, almost inaudible whisper came underneath it, but I couldn't make out the words. I don't remember the way back. I don't remember where I started. I pressed pause. My hands were shaking. This wasn't the same recording I'd heard at work. The words were different. The tone was worse, raw, afraid. When I pressed play again, there was a long stretch of silence, broken only by faint scratching sounds. Then, don't answer the call. I stopped the tape. I don't know how long I sat there. At some point, I realized I was holding the phone from my kitchen wall in my other hand, like I'd picked it up without thinking about it. The line was dead. I put the phone down and just sat in the dark, staring at the player. I haven't told anyone about the second version of the recording. I don't think I can, because if the tape can change, if it can play something new every time, then maybe it's not a recording at all. Maybe it's waiting that IT was sitting there, right in front of me. The last tape. No label. Just the same faded, brittle casing as the rest, except for one thing. The little notches on top that keep a tape from being recorded over. They were still intact. I don't know why that detail got under my skin. I guess because all the others had been old, static-filled relics of some other time. But this one still could be recording. Like it wasn't finished yet. The rookie in me, the part that still thought in terms of evidence tags and chain of custody, wanted to slip on gloves before touching it. But I didn't. My hands felt clammy and awkward as I pulled it from the box. It was warm. I swear it was warm. Not hot like it had been sitting in the sun. Warm like skin. I slid it into the deck, fully expecting the same hiss and click I'd heard from the others. But instead, the player word, low and smooth, like it was already midway through something. And then I heard it. The sound of our dispatch room. Not a recording from years ago. Not from some forgotten case. It was now. I froze, every part of me aware of the room around me. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights, the murmur of another operator somewhere behind me, the squeak of my own chair when I shifted. Because all of it was on the tape. At first, I thought maybe someone had accidentally recorded over it. Maybe one of the guys had left the recorder running earlier today, and this was just a coincidence. But then I heard my voice. Not from memory. Not from something I'd already said. I heard my voice say something I was about to say. Yeah, I'll check the log, the tape me said. And I felt my mouth move a split second later, and I said the exact same thing in real life. The hair on the back of my neck prickled so hard it felt like my skin was trying to crawl off my skull. It wasn't a recording from earlier. It was a recording of now. I yanked off my headset and looked around like maybe someone was playing a prank. But the only other person in the room was Bailey, hunched over her station, typing. She didn't even glance up. I looked back at the tape deck. The little wheels were still turning. Recording. Only. How could it be recording if I hadn't hit the button? I leaned closer to the speaker, and I heard something else. At first, it was just background. The normal stuff. Bailey's keyboard clacking. The faint shuffle of papers. The building's ancient HVAC rattling in the walls. But then, under all that, there was another sound. Breathing. Not mine. Not Bailey's. Too close to the mic. It was slow, deliberate, almost waiting. I swallowed and told myself maybe it was just the tape picking up static, the hiss forming into a pattern my brain recognized as breathing. But deep down, I knew better. It was someone in the room. I turned in my chair, scanning every corner, every shadow. The doors were shut, the windows too high for anyone to look in. And yet, on the tape, the breathing grew louder. I kept listening. That's when my voice came again. But this time, I didn't say it in real life. Don't turn around, the tape me whispered. My whole body locked up. I didn't move. Couldn't. The voice on the tape wasn't just similar to mine. It was perfect, like it had been peeled right out of my throat. I forced my eyes to glance sideways at Bailey. She was still typing, oblivious. On the tape, the whisper came again, closer this time. Don't let them know you hear me. My mouth went dry. My hands gripped the desk, so hard my knuckles ached. And then the sound of the chair I was sitting in, the same tiny creak I heard every day, played on the tape, followed by footsteps. Footsteps that weren't happening in real life. They circled behind me on the recording, slow and uneven, the way someone might move if they were studying the back of your head. I couldn't hear them in the room, only on the tape. And then the breathing got close enough that it almost distorted the mic. My voice, spoke again. You're not what you think you are. The words felt wrong in my head. Not like a riddle, not like a threat, more like a fact. I whispered, barely audible, what does that mean? And immediately, the voice on the tape answered. It's already too late to move. I jerked away from the desk, hitting my shin on the metal drawer. Bailey finally looked up, startled. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I glanced at the tape deck. The spools were still turning, but the sound had changed. The breathing was gone. The footsteps, too. Now it was quieter. No, not quiet. Empty. Like the mic was recording a place without walls. Without air. Without anything. And somewhere far away, faint as a sigh, my voice called out. Help me. I didn't recognize the tone. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't urgent. It was just tired. I hit stop. My finger hovered over the eject button, but some sick, heavy part of me had to know. I pressed play again. The room came back instantly. The real one. Bailey typing. The HVAC. My own slight movements. Only now, there were 3 sets of sounds. Me, Bailey, and someone else. The new set was subtle at first. A faint tapping, like fingernails on metal. Then a scrape, dragging along the floor. And then, the voice again. My voice. They'll think you're crazy if you tell them. I turned to Bailey. She was looking at me, frowning slightly. What? I asked. I didn't say anything, she said. But I wasn't looking at her lips. I was looking at the corner of the room behind her chair, where the shadow didn't match the light. I blinked, and it was gone. When I looked back at the tape deck, the spools had stopped turning. Except the counter was still ticking up. The machine was still listening. Without thinking, I reached forward and yanked the tape out. But as I did, I heard it. Through the machine, through the air, through everything. My own voice, not from the speaker. From somewhere just behind my ear. We're not done yet.